The flames painted the midnight sky in shades of hell. While a crowd stood frozen, phones raised like offerings to their social media gods, Noah Bennett ran toward the inferno. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because a life hung in the balance, and he was the only one willing to burn for it. He didn't know the woman he'd pull from those flames would return to change everything. He didn't know that one moment of courage would ignite a chain reaction that would transform his entire existence. Before we dive into this incredible journey, I want to ask you something. Drop a comment with your city name below. Let's see how far this story travels around the world. And stick with me until the end, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. The smell hit Noah Bennett first. Acrid, chemical, wrong. He'd been walking home from his late shift at Martinez Auto Repair, his boots scuffed and oil-stained, his body aching in that familiar way that told him he'd earned every dollar of his modest paycheck. The night air in downtown Portland had been crisp and clean just moments before, carrying that particular Pacific Northwest bite that made you pull your jacket a little tighter. Now, it tasted like destruction. He turned the corner onto Riverside Avenue, and his breath caught. The Oakmont Apartments, a sleek 12-story building that had always seemed too expensive, too polished for this mixed neighborhood where gentrification met grit, was engulfed. Not just smoking, not just flickering, engulfed. Orange and yellow flames licked out of windows on the third and fourth floors like demonic tongues tasting the night air. Black smoke billowed upward in thick columns, blotting out the stars. Noah's first thought, the one that pierced through his shock like a cold knife, was of his son. But no. Caleb was safe. Caleb was 3 miles away at Mrs. Henderson's house, probably already asleep, his 7-year-old body curled around that ratty stuffed dog he refused to give up. Caleb was safe. Noah repeated it like a prayer as his feet began to move, faster now, toward the chaos. The street was already packed. Fire trucks hadn't arrived yet. This couldn't have been burning for more than a few minutes, but the crowd was thick and growing. People poured from neighboring buildings in various states of undress, some in pajamas, others wrapped in blankets. And phones. God, so many phones. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all raised high, all recording, all capturing the disaster for their followers, their feeds, their 15 seconds of viral fame. Noah pushed through the crowd, his mechanic's shoulders, broad from years of wrestling with stubborn bolts and heavy parts, parting the mass of humanity. He heard fragments of conversation, pieces of panic. Heard it was an electrical fire. Someone said the alarms didn't go off. Posting this to Twitter, this is insane. Where are the firefighters? A woman in a pink bathrobe grabbed his arm. You can't go closer. It's not safe. Her eyes were wide, mascara smudged, and she smelled like wine and fear. Noah gently extracted his arm. Anyone still inside? I don't know. Oh God, this is... She dissolved into sobs and someone else pulled her back into the crowd. He kept moving. The heat intensified with each step until he could feel it pressing against his face like an angry hand. The building's front entrance was a wall of smoke. Through it, Noah could barely make out the modern lobby he'd glimpsed 1,000 times while walking past. Glass and chrome and expensive-looking art that probably cost more than his annual salary. A young guy couldn't have been more than 19 blocked his path. He wore a security uniform that looked too big for his lanky frame. His name tag read Marcus. Sir, you need to step back. Fire department's on the way. We've evacuated... Everyone? Noah interrupted, his voice rough. Marcus hesitated, just for a second. But Noah saw it. That flicker of uncertainty, that shadow of doubt. I think so. We went floor to floor, we knocked on every door, but some people didn't answer and we couldn't... The kid's voice cracked. The smoke got too thick on 4. We had to get out. 4th floor, where the flames looked worst. Noah looked at the building, then at the crowd. At least 50 people with their phones out, recording every moment, creating content, bearing witness, doing absolutely nothing. Something Sarah used to say echoed in his mind. His late wife, gone 4 years now to cancer, who'd always seen the best in him even when he couldn't see it himself. You're the guy who runs toward trouble, Noah. Always have been. It's gonna get you hurt one day, but it's also who you are. Don't ever apologize for that. Which apartments on 4 didn't answer? Noah asked. Sir, You can't go in there. Which ones? Marcus looked at him, really looked at him, and something passed between them, an understanding, a recognition that sometimes protocol wasn't enough. 4C didn't answer, neither did 4F, but I'm telling you, the smoke. Noah was already moving. He yanked off his jacket, a battered denim thing that had seen better days, and wrapped it around his face, covering his nose and mouth. Not perfect, but better than nothing. He'd learned that much from a warehouse fire he'd witnessed back in his early 20s when he'd been too stupid and too young to know better than to help the firefighters pull people out. Sir, you can't. Marcus's protests faded as Noah plunged into the smoke. The lobby was a nightmare rendered in gray and black. The smoke was so thick he couldn't see 5 feet ahead. He kept low, remembering something about smoke rising, about the clearer air near the floor. His eyes watered immediately, tears streaming down his face. The heat was worse than he'd expected. Not just warm, but hot, like opening an oven door and sticking your face inside. The stairs. He needed to find the stairs. The elevator would be suicide. He knew that much from basic common sense and way too many disaster movies he'd watched with Caleb. His hands found the wall and he followed it, moving fast but not recklessly. His lungs already burned, each breath through the jacket a struggle. There. The stairwell door glowing with an exit sign that seemed impossibly bright through the murk. He grabbed the handle, hot, Jesus, it was hot, and yanked it open. The stairwell was clearer. Not clean, not safe, but better. He could see more than a few feet, could breathe without feeling like he was inhaling sandpaper. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his legs pumping, his heart hammering against his ribs like it wanted out. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. The sound of the fire was getting louder now, a roar that seemed alive, hungry. He could hear things cracking, breaking, the building itself protesting its own destruction. 4th floor. Noah burst through the stairwell door and into hell. The hallway was an inferno. Flames crawled along the ceiling like living creatures, consuming the expensive wallpaper, the recessed lighting, everything. The heat was unbearable, a physical force that made him want to turn and run. Smoke rolled in waves, and even through his jacket mask, he could barely breathe. 4C, he needed to find 4C. The apartment numbers were brass, reflecting the firelight. 4A, 4B, there, 4C. The door was closed, no smoke seeping from underneath, no flames visible through the peephole. Maybe Marcus had been wrong. Maybe the apartment was empty. Maybe... Noah tried the handle. Locked. "Hello?" he shouted, his voice muffled through the jacket, barely audible over the fire's roar. "Anyone in there? Fire department." The lie came easily. If someone was in there, they'd respond better to authority than to some random mechanic. Nothing. He pressed his ear to the door, straining to hear anything. And there. Was that something? A sound, faint, maybe just his imagination, but maybe not. Maybe a voice, weak and calling. The door was solid. These luxury apartments didn't mess around with hollow cores, but the frame was wood and wood burned. Noah stepped back, measured the distance, and kicked. The impact jolted through his leg, up his spine. The door shuddered, but held. He kicked again. Harder. The frame splintered. A third kick, and the door flew inward. Smoke poured out thick and black, and Noah was hit by a wave of heat that made his skin feel like it was shrinking. He dove forward, staying low, his eyes scanning desperately through the haze. The apartment was chaos. Furniture overturned, paper scattered, curtains on fire. The flames had spread from the hallway through the walls, and one entire side of the living room was already consumed. But it was the bedroom door, hanging open on the left, that drew his attention. Noah crawled toward it, his hands finding carpet. Expensive, thick, probably Persian or something fancy, now scorched and hot enough to burn. The smoke was worse here, so dense he literally couldn't see his hand in front of his face. "Hello," he called out again, his voice raw. "Is anyone here?" And then he heard it. Not a call for help, but something worse. Labored breathing, wet and struggling. The sound of someone who'd inhaled too much smoke, whose body was shutting down. He followed the sound like a beacon, his hands sweeping the floor. They found fabric first. Silk, maybe, or satin. And then skin. An arm. A shoulder. A person. She was collapsed beside the bed, face down, her body limp. Noah grabbed her, trying to assess how badly she was hurt, even as precious seconds ticked away. She was wearing what looked like expensive pajamas, black silk with some kind of embroidered pattern. Her dark hair was matted and singed. He couldn't see her face, couldn't tell if she was young or old, conscious or not. Didn't matter. He'd come for this, and he was sure as hell leaving with her. Noah hooked his arms under her shoulders and dragged her backward, toward the apartment entrance. She was dead weight and heavier than she looked. Not overweight, just unconscious, every muscle slack. His own breathing was getting worse now, each inhalation a struggle that brought more heat than oxygen. The hallway seemed twice as long on the way out. The flames had spread, growing bolder, and a section of ceiling collapsed just feet behind them in an explosion of sparks and burning debris. Noah felt the impact through the floor, felt the building shudder like a wounded animal. Keep moving, just keep moving. The stairwell door was ahead, but now flames licked around its frame. He'd have to go through fire to reach it. No choice. No other way out. Noah repositioned the woman, cradling her against his chest, using his body to shield her. Then he ran. 3 steps through flame. The heat was indescribable, pain beyond pain, a searing agony that made his nerves scream. He felt his shirt catch fire, smelled his own hair burning. But then he was through, stumbling into the stairwell, and gravity took over. He half ran, half fell down the stairs, his legs trembling, his vision tunneling. The woman in his arms groaned, the first sound she'd made. And Noah took that as a good sign. Meant she was alive. Meant this wasn't for nothing. Second floor, first floor, the lobby. The smoke was worse now than when he'd entered, the fire having spread throughout the building. Noah couldn't see anything, could only follow his instincts toward where he remembered the entrance being. His lungs felt like they were full of glass shards. His skin burned. Every part of him screamed to stop, to rest, to give up. He kept moving, and then cool air, fresh air, night air. He burst through the entrance and the crowd erupted. Hands reached for him, for the woman, voices shouting. The world spun, and Noah realized he was falling. Strong arms caught him, lowered him to the ground. Get back! Give them space! Marcus. The security guard was there, his young face streaked with soot and tears. Someone call 911 again. Tell them we have casualties. Already here, another voice. Ambulance is 2 minutes out. Fire trucks are right behind. Noah lay on the concrete, his chest heaving, and realized he still had the woman. She was sprawled half across him, and now he could see her face for the first time. Even covered in soot and ash, even with an angry burn across her left cheek and her skin gray from smoke inhalation, she was striking. High cheekbones, full lips, probably in her mid-30s. The kind of face you'd see in a boardroom or on the cover of a magazine. The kind of face that spoke of money and power and a life very different from his own. Her eyes fluttered open, just for a moment, and they were an extraordinary shade of gray. They focused on him with an intensity that seemed impossible given her condition. You, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You came. Then her eyes closed again, and she went limp. Hey, stay with me! Noah patted her cheek gently, tried to rouse her, but she was out. But she was breathing. He could see her chest rising and falling, could feel her pulse under his fingers when he checked her neck. She was alive. He'd gotten her out. The relief hit him like a physical wave, and suddenly all the pain came flooding back. His arms burned. His lungs felt like they'd been scoured with steel wool. His face hurt in ways he didn't know were possible. Sir, can you hear me? A paramedic appeared in his vision, young, female, wearing blue gloves and a look of professional concern. I need you to stay still. You've got burns. You've inhaled a lot of smoke. We need to get you to the hospital. Her first, Noah managed, nodding toward the woman. Check her first. We've got her, buddy. We've got you both. You did good. You did real good. The paramedic's voice was kind, reassuring, as she began examining him with quick, efficient movements. More sirens. More voices. The world was becoming a blur of activity. Fire trucks arriving, their crews deploying with practiced precision. More ambulances, police cars with their lights painting everything blue and red. Someone draped a blanket over Noah's shoulders. Someone else put an oxygen mask over his face, and the first breath of pure oxygen was like drinking cold water after crossing a desert. His vision cleared slightly, his head stopped spinning quite so much. Through the crowd, through the chaos, he could see them loading the woman onto a gurney. Her silk pajamas were torn and burned, her skin was gray, but she was alive. Paramedics swarmed her, checking vitals, starting an IV, communicating in that rapid-fire medical shorthand that meant they knew what they were doing. "We need to transport both of them," someone said. "Priority 1. "I'll call Children's Hospital, see if they can—" "No," Noah interrupted, pulling the oxygen mask aside. "No hospital. I'm fine." The paramedic, her name tag read Chen, gave him a look that suggested she'd heard this before and wasn't impressed. "Sir, you have second-degree burns on your arms and face. You've inhaled enough smoke to choke a horse. You need medical attention." "My son," Noah said. "I have a 7-year-old son. He's at a neighbor's house. I need to— We'll contact someone. Where's your phone?" Noah patted his pockets, then remembered. "Burned. It was in my jacket pocket," which he'd used as a smoke mask and which was now God knows where in that building. "Okay, sir, listen to me." Chen's voice was firm but not unkind. "We're taking you to the hospital. It's not negotiable, but I promise you, we will contact whoever's watching your son and let them know you're okay. We'll make sure he's taken care of, but right now you need to let us take care of you. Understand?" Noah wanted to argue. Every instinct told him to get up, to go to Caleb, to make sure his son knew he was safe. But his body wasn't cooperating. His legs felt like jelly. His vision was getting blurry again despite the oxygen. "Mrs. Henderson," he managed. "Candace Henderson, 2247 Morrison Street. My son Caleb is with her. Tell her I'm okay. Tell her not to scare him." "We'll take care of it," Chen promised. "Now lie back. We're going to get you on a gurney." As they lifted him, and God, when did he become so heavy, or were his limbs just not working right? Noah caught one more glimpse of the woman he'd saved. She was already inside an ambulance, the doors closing, lights flashing. Then they were moving him too, and the night sky wheeled overhead, still stained orange from the fire. In the ambulance, things became fragmented. He remembered a blood pressure cuff tightening around his arm, remembered someone cutting away his shirt, his favorite flannel, the one Sarah had bought him for Christmas 6 years ago, now just scorched rags. Remembered the sharp sting of an IV going in, and Chen's voice saying something about fluids and oxygen saturation. "The woman," he asked, fighting to stay conscious. "Will she be okay?" "They're taking good care of her," Chen said. "What you did back there, running into a burning building like that was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Which do you think?" Noah asked, and was surprised to hear himself almost laugh. "Little of both, probably." Chen smiled. "But she's alive because of you. Remember that. Whatever happens next, she's alive because you didn't just stand there with a phone." The ambulance doors closed, and they were moving, siren wailing. Through the back windows, Noah could see the Oakmont apartment still burning, still fighting against the water the firefighters were pumping into it. A dozen stories of glass and steel and expensive dreams, now a monument to how quickly everything could change. He thought of Caleb, sweet, serious Caleb, who worried too much for a 7-year-old, who'd already lost his mother and lived with the fear that his father might disappear too. Mrs. Henderson would tell him, would make it okay, would probably let him sleep in tomorrow and make him those chocolate chip pancakes he loved. He thought of the woman, those gray eyes, that whispered, "You came," like she'd been waiting for him specifically, like somehow, impossibly, she'd known he would. He thought of Sarah and wondered what she'd say about tonight. Probably shake her head and call him an idiot, but in that fond way she had. Probably tell him she loved him for being exactly who he was, the guy who ran toward trouble instead of away from it. The paramedic checked his vitals again, wrote something on a clipboard. "Doing good," she said. "Vitals are stabilizing. You're tough, I'll give you that." "Mechanic," Noah said, his voice rough. "Built for durability." "Well, this mechanic just saved someone's life tonight. How's that feel?" How did it feel? Noah tried to find words for it. The terror. The pain. The absolute certainty in that moment when he'd pulled her from the burning apartment that this was what he was supposed to do. Not for glory, not for recognition, just because someone needed help and he could provide it. Ask me tomorrow, he finally said. When my lungs don't feel like I've been gargling razor blades. Chen laughed. Fair enough. The ambulance turned, and through the window, Noah caught a glimpse of Portland's skyline. The bridges over the Willamette River lit up, the city spread out in a carpet of lights. Somewhere out there, Caleb was sleeping. Somewhere out there, that woman was fighting to recover from the smoke that had nearly killed her. Somewhere out there, people were still posting videos of the fire, still commenting, still consuming the tragedy as entertainment. But here, in this ambulance, there was just him and the paramedic and the steady beep of monitors and the knowledge that he'd done something that mattered, something real. The hospital emerged from the darkness. Providence Portland Medical Center, its emergency entrance bright and efficient. They wheeled him in through automatic doors, and suddenly he was in that world of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smells and medical professionals moving with practiced urgency. A doctor appeared, older, gray-haired, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Noah Bennett, I'm Dr. Kareem. You had quite an adventure tonight. Is she here? Noah asked immediately. The woman from the fire. Dr. Kareem nodded. She's being treated now. Smoke inhalation, some burns, but stable. Thanks to you getting her out when you did. Another few minutes? He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. They treated Noah's burns, second degree on his forearms, and one nasty patch on his shoulder where burning debris had hit him. They cleaned and dressed the wounds with practiced efficiency that spoke of too many emergencies, too many burn victims. They gave him more oxygen, kept him on IV fluids, took chest x-rays to check for lung damage. You'll be sore for a while, Dr. Kareem said, reviewing the x-rays on a computer screen. Your lungs took a beating, but no permanent damage that I can see. The burns will heal, though you'll want to keep them clean and dressed. You were lucky, Mr. Bennett. Very lucky. Can I see her? Noah asked. The woman? She's not conscious yet. We've got her on oxygen, and we're monitoring her closely, but she inhaled a lot of smoke. It's going to be a few hours before we know more. But she'll be okay. Dr. Kareem paused, choosing his words carefully. I think so. But Mr. Bennett, Noah, you need to understand something. What you did tonight was incredibly dangerous. Buildings on fire are death traps. The smoke alone can kill you in minutes. You could have died in there. But I didn't, Noah said simply. No, Dr. Kareem agreed. You didn't. And neither did she. So I suppose sometimes dangerous and stupid are just other words for heroic. He smiled, tired but genuine. Get some rest. We're keeping you overnight for observation. Tomorrow, assuming your vitals stay stable, you can go home to your son. Caleb. Noah's chest tightened. Someone called Mrs. Henderson? Told her I'm okay? We did. She said to tell you Caleb doesn't know anything yet. She told him you had to work late. She'll bring him by in the morning if you're up for it. Relief flooded through Noah. Mrs. Henderson was good people, a widow in her 60s who'd taken Caleb under her wing after Sarah died, who treated him like the grandson she'd never had. She'd know how to handle this, how to make it not scary for a little boy who'd already seen too much loss. They moved Noah to a room, small, clean, with that particular hospital quiet that's never quite silent. He lay in the bed, his body aching in a dozen places, his arms bandaged and throbbing, and stared at the ceiling. What had he done? Played hero, nearly gotten himself killed, all for a woman he didn't know. If things had gone differently, if the ceiling had collapsed 30 seconds earlier, if he'd taken a wrong turn in the smoke, Caleb would be an orphan. Mrs. Henderson would be the one getting the call, the terrible one, the one that changed everything. But things hadn't gone differently. He'd made it out. They both had. Noah closed his eyes and immediately saw flames, felt the heat, heard that wet, struggling breathing that had led him to her, saw those gray eyes opening, focusing on him with impossible clarity. You came, like she'd been expecting him. Like somehow, impossibly, this had all been meant to happen. He drifted towards sleep, his exhausted body finally demanding rest. His last conscious thought was of Caleb's face when he saw him tomorrow. The relief, the joy, maybe the anger that his dad had scared him again, had been reckless again, had been exactly who he was. The guy who ran toward trouble, always had been. Sarah was right about that. Outside his hospital room, Portland continued its night. The fire was finally out, leaving the Oakmont apartments a blackened skeleton. News vans had arrived, reporters doing stand-ups with the wreckage behind them, already crafting the narrative of disaster and heroism. Social media lit up with videos and commentary and hot takes. And somewhere in this same hospital, in a room he'd never see, the woman with the gray eyes lay unconscious, breathing steadily through an oxygen mask, her body fighting to heal. In the pocket of her burned pajamas, singed but intact, was a phone, and on that phone, as it had been for 3 years, was a single photo saved as her lock screen. It was a picture of her father, smiling, young, alive. He'd died in a fire when she was 16, and tonight, someone had run into the flames to save her. The circle was closing. The debt was forming. And neither Noah Bennett nor Madeline Cross, though he didn't know her name yet and she barely remembered his face, had any idea how much was about to change. The night deepened toward dawn, and in the space between sleep and waking, in the quiet moments when the world holds its breath, destiny began to weave its threads. All because one man had decided that some things were worth burning for. Morning arrived with pale light filtering through hospital blinds, and Noah woke to the sound of small feet running down the hallway. He knew that rhythm, had memorized it over 7 years of fatherhood. Before he could fully sit up, his door burst open and Caleb launched himself at the bed. "Dad! Dad! You're okay!" The boy's voice cracked with relief and something that might have been tears. "Hey, buddy. Careful, careful." Noah winced as Caleb's weight hit his bandaged arms, but he wrapped them around his son anyway, holding him close enough to feel the rapid beating of his small heart. "I'm okay. I'm fine." Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway, her silver hair pulled back in its usual neat bun, her face lined with concern. "I'm sorry, Noah. I told him to wait, but the moment we got to your floor, he just took off running." "It's all right, Candace. Thank you for—" Noah's voice caught. "Thank you for taking care of him." Caleb pulled back and Noah saw the fear in his son's eyes, that deep primal terror that lived in children who'd already lost one parent. "Mrs. Henderson said there was a fire. She said you went inside a burning building." His small hands gripped Noah's hospital gown. "Why would you do that? Why would you—" The words dissolved into sobs. Noah pulled him close again, resting his chin on top of Caleb's dark hair the same shade as Sarah's had been. "Someone needed help, Cal. I couldn't just walk away." "But what about me?" The question was muffled against Noah's chest, but it cut deeper than any burn. "What if you didn't come back? What if you died like Mom?" There it was. The fear that haunted both of them, spoken aloud in a sterile hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and regret. Noah looked at Mrs. Henderson, who had the grace to turn away, pretending to examine something in the hallway while giving them this moment. "I didn't die," Noah said softly, tilting Caleb's face up to meet his eyes. "I'm right here. A little singed around the edges, but here." "You smell like smoke," Caleb said accusingly. "Yeah, well, that's what happens when you run into burning buildings like an idiot," Mrs. Henderson interjected from the doorway, her tone sharp but her eyes kind. "Because that's what my late husband would have called it. God rest his soul, but he would have boxed your ears for scaring your boy like this." Noah couldn't argue with that. He'd spent half the night wrestling with the same thoughts, balancing what was right against what was safe, courage against responsibility, the man he was against the father he needed to be. Dr. Kareem appeared behind Mrs. Henderson, chart in hand and that same tired kindness in his eyes. "Good morning. I see we have visitors." He smiled at Caleb. "You must be the famous Caleb. Your dad talked about you quite a bit last night." Caleb looked suspicious. "Is he really okay?" "He really is," Dr. Kareem confirmed, moving into the room to check Noah's vitals. "His lungs are clear, his burns are healing nicely, and his stubbornness appears to be completely intact." He wrapped a blood pressure cuff around Noah's arm. "Which brings me to my next point. You're cleared to go home. But I want you taking it easy for the next week. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity, and keep those burns clean and dressed." "I have to work," Noah said immediately. "I can't afford—" "You have sick days," Dr. Kareem interrupted. "Use them. Your body needs time to heal, and your son needs to see that you're taking care of yourself." He glanced meaningfully at Caleb, who nodded vigorously in agreement. Before Noah could respond, a nurse appeared in the doorway, young, blonde, slightly breathless. "Dr. Kareem? Sorry to interrupt, but Ms. Cross is awake and asking about him." She gestured toward Noah. The name meant nothing to Noah, but Doctor. Kareem's eyebrows rose slightly. "She's asking for him specifically?" "Yes, sir. She's been quite insistent." "Who's Miss Cross?" Noah asked. "The woman you pulled from the fire," Dr. Kareem said. "Madeline Cross. She regained consciousness about 2 hours ago." He studied Noah with interest. "She's been asking about her rescuer since she woke up." Something shifted in Noah's chest, part curiosity, part unease. "Is she okay?" "She's going to be fine. Some burns, smoke inhalation, but nothing that won't heal. You got her out just in time." Dr. Kareem paused. "Would you like to see her? She's in the VIP suite on the 8th floor." "VIP suite?" Mrs. Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Who is this woman?" "I'll let her introduce herself," Dr. Kareem said diplomatically. "Noah, it's up to you. You're under no obligation." Noah looked at Caleb, who had finally stopped crying but still gripped his hand like he might disappear, then at Mrs. Henderson, who gave him one of her knowing looks, the kind that suggested she could read his thoughts better than he could. "Go," she said. "Caleb and I will get your discharge papers sorted. You need to see this through." "I want to come," Caleb said immediately. "Buddy, I want to see the lady you saved." Caleb's jaw set in that stubborn way that was pure Sarah. "Please? I need to see that it was real, that it mattered." The words hit Noah harder than expected. This was what it meant to be 7 years old and scared, needing proof that the risk had been worth it, that his father's absence from his bed last night had meant something more than just fear. "Okay," Noah said quietly. "Okay, Cal. We'll go together." Dr. Kareem led them through the hospital's maze of corridors, up an elevator that moved too smoothly and opened onto a floor that looked more like a luxury hotel than a medical facility. The 8th floor had carpet instead of linoleum, abstract art on the walls instead of health posters, and a kind of hush that spoke of money and privilege. "The VIP suite is generally reserved for donors and board members," Dr. Kareem explained as they walked. "Ms. Cross insisted on being moved here this morning once she was stable enough for transport." "Who is she?" Mrs. Henderson asked again, her voice low. "You'll see." They stopped outside a door flanked by 2 men in dark suits who looked like they bench-pressed sedans for fun. Security. Serious security. One of them held up a hand as they approached. "Dr. Kareem, Ms. Cross is expecting you, but who are they?" "This is Noah Bennett," Dr. Kareem said. "The man who saved her life. She asked to see him." The security guard spoke into a wrist mic, listened to a response Noah couldn't hear, then stepped aside. "She'll see you, but just you, Mr. Bennett. The others wait here." Noah looked at Caleb, whose eyes had gone wide at the sight of the guards. "Buddy." "It's okay," Caleb said, though he looked anything but convinced. "I'll wait with Mrs. Henderson." "I'll be right back. 5 minutes." Noah squeezed his son's shoulder, then followed Dr. Kareem through the door. The VIP suite was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Portland, Mount Hood visible in the distance. The furniture was designer, the flowers on the side table fresh and expensive. And in the hospital bed, which looked more comfortable than Noah's bed at home, sat the woman from the fire. In daylight, cleaned up and conscious, Madeline Cross was striking in a way that made Noah understand why she rated this kind of treatment. She wore a silk robe over her hospital gown, her dark hair pulled back to reveal the bandage on her left cheek. Her gray eyes, those same eyes that had focused on him through the smoke, were sharp and assessing. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice slightly hoarse but steady. "Please, come in." Dr. Kareem nodded to Noah and quietly left, closing the door behind him. Suddenly, Noah was very aware of his own appearance, wearing borrowed scrubs from the hospital, his arms wrapped in bandages, his face probably still covered in soot he hadn't managed to wash off completely. "Ma'am," he said awkwardly, "I just wanted to see that you were all right." "All right?" A small smile played at her lips. I'm alive because of you. I think that qualifies as more than all right. She gestured to a chair beside the bed. Please sit and call me Madeline. Noah sat, feeling out of place in this room that probably cost more per night than he made in a week. How are you feeling? Like I was pulled from a burning building, she said dryly. But the doctors tell me I'll make a full recovery. You got me out before the worst of the damage could occur. Her eyes studied him with an intensity that made him want to squirm. Why did you do it? Do what? Run into a building that was actively burning. Risk your life for a stranger. Noah shrugged, uncomfortable with the direct question. Someone needed help. There were at least 50 people standing outside that building. None of them came in. They were recording it on their phones. Exactly. Madeline leaned forward slightly, wincing at the movement. They were watching. You acted. Why? I don't know, Noah said honestly. I couldn't stand there and do nothing. Someone said apartments hadn't been checked, and I thought about what if it were my son up there? What if someone needed help and nobody came and He stopped, realizing he was rambling. I didn't think about it. I just did it. You didn't think about your own safety. Not really. What about your son? You must have thought about him. Noah's jaw tightened. I thought about him after. When I was lying in my hospital bed wondering what the hell I'd been thinking, risking leaving him an orphan. He met her eyes. But in the moment, no, I just knew someone needed help and I could provide it. Madeline was quiet for a long moment, studying him with those penetrating gray eyes. Finally, she said, I need to tell you something, Mr. Bennett, about why this matters so much. Noah, he corrected. Just Noah. Noah. She took a breath, and when she spoke again, her voice carried weight. When I was 16 years old, I watched my father die in a fire. A warehouse fire in Seattle, where my family's company was headquartered. He went back inside to save some documents, stupid, irreplaceable documents that meant nothing, and the building collapsed. The firefighters said it was instant, that he didn't suffer. They were lying, but I appreciated the kindness. Noah felt his chest tighten. I'm sorry. There were people outside that warehouse too, Madeline continued. Dozens of them. His employees, his colleagues, people who owed him everything. And they all just watched. Nobody went in. Nobody even tried. Her fingers gripped the bedsheet. Last night, when I woke up in that apartment and couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't move, I thought this is it. This is how I die. Just like him. Alone in the fire. But you didn't. No, because you came. Her voice cracked slightly. You didn't know me. You had no reason to risk your life. You had every reason not to. You have a son who needs you, but you came anyway. Noah didn't know what to say to that. The emotion in her voice, the rawness of it, made his own throat tight. I want to repay you, Madeline said, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. For what you did. That's not necessary. Let me finish. She reached for a tablet on her bedside table, wincing again at the movement. I've had my assistant do some research on you this morning. I hope you don't mind. Noah did mind, actually, but he said nothing. You're a mechanic at Martinez Auto Repair. You make $42,000 a year. You're a widower, raising your son alone. You rent a house in Southeast Portland. You have good credit, despite some medical debt from your wife's cancer treatment. She looked up from the tablet. You're a good man living a hard life, Noah. Let me make it easier. She produced an envelope from beside the tablet and held it out to him. Noah took it hesitantly, opened it, and felt his stomach drop. Inside was a check with his name on it. A check for $500,000. What? His voice failed him. What is this? It's a thank you, Madeline said simply, for saving my life. Noah stared at the check, at the number that seemed impossible, obscene. $500,000. More money than he'd make in 10 years. Maybe 50. Money that could change everything. Pay off Sarah's medical debt. Buy a real house. Set up a college fund for Caleb. Never worry about making rent or whether his truck would make it through another winter. He looked at Madeline Cross, really looked at her, and understood who she was. The expensive suite, the security, the casual way she talked about $500,000 like it was a reasonable tip. Who are you? He asked quietly. I'm the CEO of Cross Industries, she said. We're a technology and manufacturing conglomerate with operations in 12 countries. I'm worth, according to the latest Forbes estimate, approximately $3.2 billion. She said it without bragging, just stating facts. $500,000 is, for me, a rounding error. For you, it's life-changing. Please take it. Noah stood up, the check still in his hand, and walked to the window. Below, Portland spread out in its Friday morning routine, people going to work, living their lives, unaware that in this room, someone was trying to put a price tag on human decency. I can't take this, he said. Why not? Because I didn't save you for money. Noah turned to face her. I saved you because it was the right thing to do, because someone needed help, and I was there. Taking this, he gestured with the check. It makes it into a transaction. It turns something that mattered into something that has a price. Everything has a price, Madeline said, but her tone was curious rather than cynical. That's the way the world works. Maybe your world, not mine. Noah walked back to the bed and placed the check on her tablet. I'm glad you're okay, Ms. Cross. I really am, but I don't want your money. Then what do you want? The question stopped him. What did he want? For Caleb to stop being scared every time Noah was late coming home. For Sarah's medical bills to disappear. For his life to be something more than paycheck to paycheck, worry to worry. For the ache in his chest that had lived there since Sarah died to finally ease. I want my son to see that doing the right thing matters, he said finally. That's all. Madeline studied him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. You're serious? Yes, ma'am. And there's nothing I can offer you, nothing I can do to repay this debt? There's no debt, Noah said firmly. You don't owe me anything. I disagree. Madeline's tone turned decisive, the voice of someone used to making decisions and having them followed. But I respect your position, so let me make you a different offer. Not payment. An opportunity. Noah's instincts told him to refuse, to walk out of this suite and back to his regular life, to forget about gray-eyed billionaires and checks with too many zeros. But something in her voice made him pause. What kind of opportunity? Come work for me, Madeline said. Cross Industries has a facilities management division that oversees our properties worldwide. We need people with practical skills, people who can solve problems, people who can think on their feet. She leaned forward. You ran into a burning building while everyone else watched. That's the kind of person I want on my team. I'm a mechanic, Noah said. I fix cars, not... You're someone who takes action when it matters, Madeline interrupted. That's rarer and more valuable than any technical skill. I can teach you the business side. What I can't teach is character. You either have it or you don't. Her eyes held his. You have it. Noah shook his head. I don't know anything about corporate jobs. I work with my hands. I get dirty. I'm not... You're not what? Not good enough? Not smart enough? Madeline's voice turned sharp. I've seen your work history, Noah. You've been at Martinez for 8 years. Your boss says you're the best mechanic he's ever had, that you can diagnose problems other people miss, that customers ask for you by name. You're resourceful, dependable, and honest. That's exactly what I need. Why? Noah asked bluntly. Why do you care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything no matter what you think. Why would you offer me a job? Madeline was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of her tablet. When she spoke, her voice was softer. Because, for 20 years, I've been trying to live up to my father's legacy. To prove that his death meant something, that the company he built can continue without him. I've been ruthless. I've been calculating. I've made decisions that were good for business but hard on people. She looked up at him. Last night I had a moment of clarity in that apartment. When I couldn't breathe, when I thought I was going to die alone in the fire just like he did, I realized I'd spent so much time building an empire that I'd forgotten what really matters. And what's that? People, she said simply. You didn't save a CEO last night. You didn't save a billionaire or a Forbes list regular. You saved a person, a human being who was scared and dying. And you did it because it was right. She gestured around the suite. All of this. The money, the power, the success. It means nothing if I can't use it to do something that actually matters. So let me. Let me create something that honors what you did. By giving me a job I'm not qualified for. By giving you an opportunity to be part of something bigger, Madeline corrected. I'm not asking you to wear a suit and push papers. I'm asking you to help me build a program that actually makes a difference. Fire prevention, building safety, emergency response. You saw firsthand how bad it can get. Help me make sure it doesn't happen to others. Noah felt the weight of her words, the genuine emotion behind them. This wasn't just about repaying a debt. This was about something deeper. About a woman who'd spent 20 years running from her father's death and had finally turned to face it. I need to think about it, he said. I need to talk to my son, to my boss, to... Take all the time you need, Madeline said. She reached into the drawer of her bedside table and pulled out a business card. That's my private number. When you're ready to talk, call me. Or don't. Either way, I'm grateful you were there last night. Noah took the card, feeling the expensive weight of it. Embossed letters, quality stock, the kind of thing that screamed money and power. I should go, he said. My son's waiting. The boy outside? Madeline asked. With the dark hair and the worried eyes? That's Caleb. Bring him in, Madeline said. Let him see I'm okay. Let him know his father's bravery mattered. Noah hesitated, then nodded. He opened the door to find Caleb practically pressed against it, trying to hear through the wood. Hey, Cal, come meet Ms. Cross. Caleb entered slowly, his eyes wide as he took in the fancy room, the view, the woman in the bed. Hi, he said quietly. Hello, Caleb, Madeline said warmly. Your father tells me you're 7. 7.5, Caleb corrected automatically, then seemed to remember his manners. Are you okay? Dad said the fire was really bad. I'm okay because of your father, Madeline said. He was very brave. You should be proud of him. I am, Caleb said, moving closer to Noah. But I was also scared he wouldn't come home. Madeline's expression softened. That's fair. It was scary, but he did come home, and I'm alive because of him. That's worth being scared for, don't you think? Caleb considered this with the seriousness only children can muster. I guess so, but I want him to stop being so brave. At least for a while. Despite everything, Noah laughed. I'll try, buddy. I'll try. They left the suite a few minutes later, Noah's head spinning with everything that had happened. The check he'd refused. The job offer he hadn't accepted. The weight of Madeline Cross's gratitude and the complicated emotions it brought up. Mrs. Henderson took one look at his face and said, That was some conversation. You have no idea, Noah muttered. They collected his discharge papers, listened to the nurse's instructions about wound care, and finally made it out to Mrs. Henderson's car. Caleb fell asleep in the back seat almost immediately, exhausted from the emotional morning. Mrs. Henderson drove in silence for a while, navigating Portland's traffic with the ease of someone who'd been doing it for decades. Finally, she said, Are you going to tell me what happened in there? She offered me $500,000, Noah said. I turned it down. Mrs. Henderson nearly swerved into the next lane. You what? I couldn't take it, Candace. It felt wrong. Wrong? She gaped at him. Noah Bennett, you have a 7-year-old son and a mountain of medical debt and a job that barely covers rent. $500,000 would change your life. I know, Noah said quietly. But I didn't save her for money. I can't start taking it now. Mrs. Henderson was quiet for a moment, then sighed. You're either the most principled man I've ever met or the biggest fool, possibly both. But her voice was fond. Sarah would have understood. She always said you had more integrity than common sense. She also said it was going to get me killed one day. Well, she was almost right about that, wasn't she? Mrs. Henderson glanced at him. What are you going to do? Go home. Sleep. Figure out how to explain to my boss why I need a week off. Noah leaned his head against the window, watching Portland slide past. Go back to my life. And the woman? Miss Cross? Noah thought about the business card in his pocket, about the offer she'd made, about the genuine emotion in her voice when she'd talked about making something that mattered. I don't know, he admitted. I honestly don't know. They pulled up to his house, a small rental in a neighborhood that was trying to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. The paint was peeling on the front porch, and the lawn needed mowing, but it was home. Safe. Familiar. Mrs. Henderson helped him wake Caleb and get him inside. She offered to stay, but Noah assured her he was fine. "You've done enough already, Candace. Thank you." "Call me if you need anything," she said firmly. "Anything at all." "And Noah? Whatever you decide about that woman's offer, make sure it's what's right for you and Caleb. Not what's noble or principled or brave. What's right for you." After she left, Noah got Caleb settled on the couch with a movie and then stood in his kitchen, staring at the business card. Madeline Cross, CEO, Cross Industries, a private number that probably very few people had. He thought about the fire, the heat, the smoke, those gray eyes opening in the darkness, the moment when everything could have gone wrong but didn't. He thought about Sarah, about the promises he'd made at her bedside, to take care of Caleb, to be smart, to not let his impulses get the better of him. He thought about the life he was living, paycheck to paycheck, worry to worry, always one crisis away from disaster. And he thought about Madeline's words, "Help me make sure it doesn't happen to others." Noah put the card on the refrigerator, held there by a magnet shaped like a cartoon dog that Caleb had picked out years ago. He'd call her, or he wouldn't. Either way, his life had already changed the moment he'd run into that fire. He just didn't know yet how much. The days that followed took on a strange quality. Normal on the surface, but fundamentally altered underneath. Noah called his boss, explained what happened, and was surprised when Martinez told him to take 2 weeks instead of 1. "You saved someone's life, man," his boss said gruffly. "That's worth some paid time off. Don't argue with me." So Noah spent his days with Caleb, playing in the backyard, watching movies, taking walks through their neighborhood. His burns healed slowly, itching and tight, but the doctors had been right. No permanent damage. His lungs cleared. His strength returned. But at night, after Caleb was asleep, Noah would stand in the kitchen and stare at that business card. Madeline Cross's private number. An opportunity that seemed too good, too complicated, too much. On the third day, his phone rang. His new phone, since his old one had been destroyed in the fire. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Bennett? Noah?" The voice was smooth, professional. "My name is Richard Chen. I'm Ms. Cross's personal assistant. She asked me to reach out to you." Noah's first instinct was to hang up. He hadn't called her, which should have been answer enough. But something made him say, "I'm listening." "Ms. Cross wanted me to clarify something about her offer," Richard continued. "She's aware you might think this is charity or pity. It's not. We've been developing a comprehensive fire prevention and emergency response program for our properties worldwide. What happened at the Oakmont? That building was one of ours, Noah. Cross Industries owned it." That stopped Noah cold. "What?" "The electrical fire started due to faulty wiring that should have been caught in our last inspection. It wasn't. Miss Cross feels personally responsible for what happened, for what nearly happened to her and to you." Richard's voice turned earnest. "She's not offering you a job out of gratitude. She's offering it because she needs someone who understands the stakes, someone who's been through it." Noah closed his eyes, processing this new information. Cross Industries had owned the building, had been responsible for its maintenance, had failed. "She wants to build something that prevents this from happening again," Richard continued, "and she thinks you're the right person to help her do it, not as a mechanic. As someone with perspective we desperately need." "I don't have any qualifications for this kind of work," Noah said. "You have the most important qualification. You know what it means when we fail. You felt it. You've lived it." Richard paused. "Just meet with her. Have a conversation. If after that you still want to say no, she'll respect that. But at least hear her out, please." Noah looked at the calendar on his refrigerator. Caleb's soccer practice on Saturdays, parent-teacher conference next week, rent due on the 1st, the ordinary scaffolding of their life. "When?" he asked. "Tomorrow. 11 a.m. I'll send a car for you. A car. I can drive myself. Ms. Cross insists. She says you've done enough. Let us take care of the details." After Richard hung up, Noah stood in his kitchen for a long time, the phone in his hand, wondering what he was about to step into, and whether, like running into that fire, he was being brave or just stupid, possibly both. Sarah would have understood. She always did. The car that arrived at 10:30 the next morning was exactly what Noah expected, and somehow still managed to surprise him. A black Mercedes S-Class, pristine and silent, driven by a woman in a crisp gray suit who introduced herself simply as Diana, and held the door open like Noah was someone important instead of a mechanic in his best pair of jeans and the one button-down shirt he owned that didn't have grease stains. Caleb pressed his face against the living room window, watching with wide eyes. Mrs. Henderson stood beside him, her expression somewhere between approval and concern. "You look nice," she'd said earlier, when he'd emerged from his bedroom feeling like he was wearing a costume. "Sarah bought you that shirt for your anniversary, didn't she?" Noah had just nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. 3 years since she'd died, and some mornings he still reached for her side of the bed. Some evenings he still turned to tell her about his day before remembering she wasn't there to listen. "Call me when you're done," Mrs. Henderson had said, squeezing his shoulder. "Whatever happens in that meeting, remember who you are. Don't let all that money and power make you forget." Now, settling into leather seats that probably cost more than his monthly rent, Noah wondered if forgetting might be easier. The life he was driving away from, his small house with its peeling paint, his son waving goodbye from the window, the familiar streets of his neighborhood, suddenly felt very far away, even though they'd barely gone 2 blocks. Diana drove with professional efficiency, navigating through downtown Portland with the ease of someone who'd done this route 1,000 times. She didn't try to make small talk, for which Noah was grateful. He needed the silence to prepare himself, though he had no idea what he was preparing for. Cross Industries headquarters occupied a sleek glass tower in the Pearl District, 30 floors of modern architecture that reflected the morning sun like a mirror. Diana pulled into an underground garage where security guards in suits nodded her through without question. She parked in a spot marked Executive Visitor and opened Noah's door before he could do it himself. "Ms. Cross is expecting you on the 28th floor, Diana said. "Richard will meet you at the elevator." The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the parking garage, giving way to the building's atrium as they rose. Richard Chen turned out to be a man in his early 30s with neat black hair, expensive glasses, and a tablet clutched like a lifeline. He smiled warmly when the elevator doors opened. "Noah, thank you for coming." He extended his hand, and his grip was firm, but not aggressive. "I hope the ride over was comfortable." "It was fine. Very quiet." Richard laughed. "Diana has that effect. Come on, I'll take you to Miss Cross." The 28th floor was all glass and chrome and carefully curated modern art. Young professionals moved through open workspace with the kind of focused energy that spoke of deadlines and ambition. A few glanced at Noah as he passed, taking in his modest clothes, his bandaged arms, but most were too absorbed in their screens to care. Richard led him through this hive of activity to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Portland. Mount Hood rose in the distance, snow-capped and magnificent. The Willamette River cut through the city like a silver ribbon. From up here, the world looked orderly, comprehensible, small. Madeline Cross stood at the window, her back to the door. She wore a charcoal gray suit that looked expensive enough to fund Caleb's college education, and her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail that revealed the bandage still covering the burn on her cheek. She turned as they entered, and Noah saw that her gray eyes held the same intensity they'd had in the hospital, but now there was something else. Determination, maybe, or purpose. "Noah, thank you for coming." She gestured to the leather chairs arranged around a glass coffee table. "Please, sit. Richard, could you give us the room?" "Of course. I'll be right outside if you need anything." Richard disappeared, closing the door softly behind him. Noah sat, feeling the chair embrace him with the kind of comfort that only truly expensive furniture provided. Madeline took the chair across from him, and for a moment they just looked at each other, two people whose lives had intersected in fire and smoke and desperation, now meeting in this pristine office where everything was clean and controlled. "How are your burns healing?" she asked. "Better. The doctors said no permanent damage." "Good. I'm glad." She touched her own bandage self-consciously. "Mine too, though I'm told this one might scar. My dermatologist is devastated. There was something about the dry way she said it that made Noah smile despite his nerves. I'm sure it won't matter. You've got that whole powerful CEO thing going. A little scar just adds character. Is that so? She raised an eyebrow, but her lips quirked slightly. I'll keep that in mind when I'm tempted to have it surgically removed. The moment of levity faded, and Madeline's expression turned serious. Richard told you about the building, that Cross Industries owned it. He did. Then you understand why this matters to me. She leaned forward, her hands clasped. That fire. It shouldn't have happened, Noah. We have protocols, we have inspections, we have systems designed to prevent exactly this kind of disaster, and they all failed. Systems fail, Noah said. It happens. Not like this. Not when lives are at stake. Her voice carried an edge of anger, of frustration turned inward. Do you know what I did the morning after the fire? After I was released from the hospital? Noah shook his head. I called an emergency board meeting. I demanded a full audit of every property we own, every inspection we've conducted, every safety protocol we claim to follow. And do you know what I found? She stood, moving to her desk and picking up a thick folder. I found complacency. I found corners cut to save money. I found inspectors who rubber-stamped reports because it was easier than doing the actual work. I found a culture that prioritized profit over people. She dropped the folder on the coffee table between them, and it landed with a heavy thud. 73 properties worldwide. 32 of them have the same outdated electrical systems as the Oakmont. 12 have fire suppression systems that haven't been properly maintained in years. 5 have emergency exits that violate current building codes. Noah opened the folder, flipping through page after page of inspection reports, photographs of electrical panels and fire escapes, highlighted sections that even to his untrained eye looked damning. This is why I need you, Madeline said, her voice intense. Not because I owe you for saving my life, though I do, and that debt will never be fully repaid. I need you because you understand what happens when these systems fail. You've been inside the fire, Noah. You've felt the heat and the smoke and the terror. That's not something you can teach in business school. What exactly are you asking me to do? Noah looked up from the folder. I'm not an inspector. I'm not an engineer. I fix cars. You solve problems, Madeline corrected. That's what mechanics do, isn't it? You diagnose what's wrong, you figure out how to fix it, and you do the work. That's exactly what I need for this program. What program? Madeline returned to her chair, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of careful thought and genuine passion. I want to create a comprehensive fire prevention and emergency response initiative, not just for our properties, but as a model that other companies can follow. Real inspections by people who care, updated safety systems, training for building staff and residents, emergency protocols that actually work. She met his eyes. And I want someone leading it who knows why it matters. Someone who won't accept half measures or excuses. Someone who will fight for every life in every building because they know what it means when we fail. Noah felt the weight of her words, the enormity of what she was proposing. That sounds expensive. It is. Preliminary estimates put it at $60 million over 3 years. She said it like it was a reasonable number, like $60 million was something you could just allocate. The board fought me on it. They said it was unnecessary, that we were already compliant with regulations, that this kind of spending would affect our bottom line. What did you tell them? A fierce smile crossed Madeline's face. I told them that I nearly died in one of our buildings because we were too cheap and too careless to do our jobs properly. I told them that if they wanted to keep prioritizing profit over safety, they could find a new CEO. I gave them until the end of the day to vote. She paused. The measure passed unanimously. Noah couldn't help but admire the sheer force of will that must have required. To face down a board of directors, to threaten your own position, to demand they do the right thing regardless of cost. That took courage of a different kind than running into fires. So you have your funding, he said. You have your mandate. What do you need me for? Perspective, Madeline said simply. I have engineers who can redesign systems. I have inspectors who can identify problems. I have project managers who can oversee implementation. What I don't have is someone who can look at all of this and tell me if it actually matters, if it would actually save lives in a real emergency. She pulled out another folder, this one slimmer, and handed it to Noah. I've had my team put together a preliminary proposal. New fire suppression systems, upgraded electrical infrastructure, enhanced emergency lighting, improved evacuation protocols. It looks good on paper, but I need you to tell me if it's real. Noah opened the folder and found himself looking at technical specifications, architectural drawings, budget breakdowns. Most of it was beyond his expertise, but some of it, the practical stuff, the hands-on elements, he could understand. Emergency lighting placement, evacuation route signage, fire door maintenance schedules. You see anything that bothers you? Madeline asked. He studied the documents, his mechanic's eye looking for the kind of details that engineers sometimes missed. And there, this emergency lighting system, it says battery backup for 2 hours. That's well above the code requirement of 90 minutes. But what if the power goes out before the fire starts? Noah looked up. What if the batteries are already drained? You need a backup to your backup. Solar panels on the roof tied to a separate battery system, or generators with automatic failover. Something that doesn't depend on the main power staying on right up until the emergency. Madeline stared at him for a moment, then grabbed her phone. Richard, get me Jensen from engineering, now. She looked back at Noah. You just identified a flaw that 3 different engineering firms missed. That's why I need you. I just thought about what could go wrong, Noah said. It's what I do when I'm diagnosing a car. You don't just look at what's broken. You look at what else could break. Exactly. Madeline set down her phone as it buzzed with a response. Jensen will be here in 5 minutes. In the meantime, I want to make you a formal offer. She stood and walked to her desk, returning with a single sheet of paper. Director of Building Safety and Emergency Response, base salary of $180,000, with performance bonuses. Full benefits, including health insurance that will cover you and your son. Education assistance if you want to pursue additional certifications. Company car. 4 weeks paid vacation. She handed him the paper. The position reports directly to me. Your job is to oversee the implementation of our safety initiative across all Cross Industries properties, with authority to shut down any building you deem unsafe until problems are corrected. Noah looked at the paper. At the salary figure that was more than 4 times what he currently made. At the benefits that would mean Caleb could see a dentist regularly, could have braces if he needed them, could have the kind of security Noah had been trying to provide on a mechanic's wages and failing. He couldn't find words. This is too much. It's what the position pays. I've had HR research comparable roles at similar companies. This is market rate for someone with your level of responsibility. But I don't have experience in this field. I don't have a degree. You have something more valuable than any of that, Madeline interrupted. You have integrity. You have courage. You have the ability to act when it matters. She sat back down, her voice softening. Noah, I'm not offering you this position because I feel guilty or grateful, though I am both. I'm offering it because I genuinely believe you're the right person for this job, but I need you to believe it too. Before Noah could respond, there was a knock at the door. Richard entered with an older man in his 50s wearing a rumpled sport coat and carrying a tablet. Ms. Cross, this is Tom Jensen, our senior structural engineer. Richard made the introductions quickly. Jensen looked between Noah and Madeline with barely concealed curiosity. Richard said this was urgent. Noah just identified a critical flaw in our emergency lighting proposal, Madeline said. Walk him through it. Noah explained his concern about the battery backup system, feeling self-conscious under Jensen's scrutiny. But as he talked, the engineer's expression shifted from skepticism to interest to what looked like respect. He's right, Jensen said when Noah finished. We designed for the most common scenarios, but we didn't account for power failures preceding fire events. Earthquakes, infrastructure damage, even planned maintenance, all of those could drain the batteries before they're needed. He turned to Madeline. We need to redesign the power redundancy systems. It'll add to the cost, but he's absolutely right. Do it, Madeline said. And I want you to work with Noah on reviewing the rest of the proposal. Get his input before we finalize anything. Noah? Jensen looked confused. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. Are you consulting for us? He's considering joining the team as Director of Building Safety, Madeline said. And based on the last 5 minutes, I'm hoping he says yes. Jensen's eyes widened slightly, but he recovered quickly. Well, if you do, I'd welcome the collaboration. We could use someone who thinks about failure modes instead of just success scenarios. After Jensen left, Noah and Madeline sat in silence for a moment. Through the windows, Portland continued its morning routine, unaware that in this office, a mechanic was being offered a chance to become something he'd never imagined. I need to think about this, Noah said finally. It's a lot to process. I understand. Take whatever time you need. Madeline stood, and Noah did the same. But while you're thinking, I want to show you something. Will you come with me? She led him out of the office, past Richard's desk, to a different elevator. This one smaller, requiring a key card to access. They rode in silence to the 12th floor, and when the doors opened, Noah found himself in what looked like a museum. The space was dimly lit, with carefully positioned spotlights illuminating photographs and artifacts arranged along the walls. Madeline walked ahead, and Noah followed, realizing slowly what he was looking at. These were memorials. Photographs of buildings, warehouses, offices, apartment complexes, all showing the aftermath of fires. Beneath each photo was a placard with details, dates, locations, casualties. This is the Cross Industries Legacy Room, Madeline said softly, stopping in front of a large photograph of a burned warehouse. My grandfather started this company in 1952. My father expanded it internationally in the 80s. Every property we've ever owned, every project we've ever built, is documented here. She gestured to the photographs of fire damage. These are the ones that haunt me, the failures, the tragedies that happened on our watch. She stopped in front of one particular photograph, a warehouse reduced to skeletal remains. This was Seattle, 2005. My father died here. Noah looked at the photograph, at the statistics on the placard. 1 fatality, millions in damages, cause electrical fire, origin unknown. I was 16, Madeline continued, her voice steady but laden with old pain. I was supposed to meet him for dinner that night. He called me at 4 o'clock and said he'd be late, that there was a problem at the warehouse that needed his attention. At 6:30, my mother got the call. She touched the photograph gently, her fingers tracing the outline of the ruined building. He went back inside for documents, contracts that he thought couldn't be replaced. The building collapsed while he was on the 3rd floor. I'm sorry, Noah said, the words inadequate but genuine. The official investigation concluded that the fire started due to faulty electrical work done by a contractor we'd hired. The contractor had cut corners, used substandard materials, falsified inspection reports. My father died because someone decided their profit margin was more important than doing the job right. She turned to look at Noah. Do you understand why this matters to me now? Why I can't just write a check and call it even? Noah thought about the Oakmont fire, about pulling Madeline from that apartment, about how close both of them had come to joining the statistics on these plaques. He thought about Caleb, about what would have happened if the ceiling had collapsed 30 seconds earlier, if he hadn't made it out. I understand, he said quietly. I've spent 20 years building this company, Madeline said, making it bigger, more profitable, more successful. I told myself I was honoring my father's memory, but the truth is, I was running from it. I didn't want to think about how he died, about the failures that led to it. I just wanted to win. She looked around the memorial room. And then I woke up in a burning building, and I realized I'd become the thing I hated. I'd let the same complacency, the same corner cutting, the same prioritization of profit over safety infect my company. The only difference is, I got lucky. You were there. She walked to a blank space on the wall where a spotlight illuminated nothing but empty space. This is where the Oakmont photograph will go, along with the story of what happened there, the failures that led to the fire, the lessons we learned, and the changes we made because of it. Why keep them? Noah asked. Why memorialize the failures? Because if we forget them, we'll repeat them, Madeline said simply. This room exists to remind me, to remind everyone who works here, that our decisions have consequences, that what we do matters, even when we think no one's watching. She turned back to him. That's what I'm trying to build, Noah. Not just safer buildings, but a culture that remembers why safety matters, and I can't do it alone. Noah looked at the empty space on the wall, imagining the Oakmont photograph that would eventually fill it. He thought about all the other buildings out there, all the other potential disasters waiting to happen, because someone cut a corner or skipped an inspection or decided that good enough was good enough. He thought about the life he could give Caleb with the salary Madeline was offering, not just stability, but opportunity. Not just survival, but thriving. But more than that, he thought about what Sarah used to say, that he was the kind of person who ran toward trouble instead of away from it, that it was going to get him hurt one day, but it was also who he was. Maybe running toward trouble didn't always mean running into fires. Maybe sometimes it meant running toward responsibility, toward purpose, toward the chance to make sure other people didn't have to face those flames at all. If I take this job, Noah said slowly, I do it my way. I don't care about politics or board meetings or what makes financial sense. If I see something that's unsafe, I shut it down. No exceptions. That's exactly what I need you to do, Madeline said. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to need training, guidance, people who can teach me what I don't know. You'll have all the resources you need. And if I get in over my head, if I realize I'm not cut out for this, then we'll figure it out together, Madeline interrupted gently. Noah, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be honest, to care, to bring that same instinct that made you run into a burning building to every decision you make in this role. Noah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was it. The decision that would change everything. He could walk away, go back to his life as a mechanic, keep things simple and safe and familiar, or he could step forward into this unknown territory, trust that maybe Madeline was right, that maybe he did have something valuable to offer. He thought about Caleb watching him leave this morning, about the pride in his son's eyes when he'd said, "You saved her life, Dad," about how desperately he wanted to give that boy a life where he didn't have to worry, where his father's bravery led to something more than just survival. He thought about Sarah, and somehow he knew what she'd say. She'd tell him to stop overthinking it. She'd tell him that sometimes you just had to trust your gut and take the leap. Okay, Noah said. I'll do it. Madeline's face lit up with a smile that transformed her from intimidating CEO to someone who looked genuinely happy. Really? Really. But I need to give Martinez 2 weeks' notice. He's been good to me, and I owe him that. Of course. Take whatever time you need. We'll work around your schedule. She extended her hand. Welcome to Cross Industries, Noah. He shook her hand, and the gesture felt weighted with significance. A partnership formed in fire, now becoming something more structured but no less important. They rode the elevator back to the 28th floor, where Richard was waiting with barely concealed excitement. He said yes? Richard asked, though it was obvious he already knew the answer. He said yes, Madeline confirmed. Richard, start the onboarding process and clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon. I want to take Noah to visit some of our local properties, show him what we're working with. Already done, and I've arranged for Diana to take Noah home whenever he's ready. As if summoned, Diana appeared, professional and efficient. Mr. Bennett, I'm ready when you are. Noah turned to Madeline. Thank you for this opportunity, for believing I could do this when I'm not sure I believe it myself. You'll figure it out, Madeline said confidently. And Noah, your son should be proud of you, not just for saving my life, but for having the courage to try something new. The ride home felt different than the ride there. Noah watched Portland pass by the car windows, seeing it with new eyes. This was his city now in a different way. These were buildings he'd be responsible for keeping safe. These were people whose lives would be affected by the decisions he made. When Diana pulled up to his house, Mrs. Henderson and Caleb were on the porch, clearly waiting. Caleb launched himself down the stairs before the car had fully stopped. Dad, what happened? Did you take the job? Are you going to work in a fancy office now? Noah caught his son, lifting him despite the protest from his healing arms. Slow down, Cal. Yes, I took the job, but I'll tell you all about it inside, Mrs. Henderson watched him with knowing eyes as they entered the house. Once Caleb was settled at the kitchen table with milk and cookies, she said, You're going to tell me everything. So Noah did. He told her about the offer, about the salary, about the memorial room, and Madeline's father and the weight of responsibility he'd just accepted. Mrs. Henderson listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to concern to something that looked like pride.
Sarah would be so proud of you, she said when he finished. She always knew you were destined for more than fixing cars. I liked fixing cars, Noah said. I was good at it. You'll be good at this too. Mrs. Henderson squeezed his hand. And Caleb will never have to worry about medical bills, or whether there's enough money for school supplies, or any of the things you've been worried about. That's worth something, Noah. I know, but I'm terrified I'm going to mess this up. Good. A little fear keeps you sharp, she smiled. Now go spend some time with your son. Tell him about his father's big fancy new job. Noah did, explaining it in terms Caleb could understand, that he'd be helping make buildings safer, making sure what happened at the Oakmont didn't happen to other people. Caleb listened with the intense focus he brought to everything, asking questions that were surprisingly insightful for a 7-year-old. So you're like a superhero, Caleb said finally. But instead of saving people from fires, you stopped the fires from happening in the first place. Noah laughed, feeling some of the tension ease from his shoulders. I guess that's one way to look at it. That's better than running into burning buildings, Caleb said seriously. Mom would like that better. The mention of Sarah made Noah's throat tight. Yeah, buddy, I think she would. That night, after Caleb was asleep, Noah stood in his small backyard looking up at the stars. Somewhere in this city, Madeline Cross was probably still in her office, still working, still driving herself with the intensity he'd seen in her eyes. Somewhere out there were buildings that needed fixing, systems that needed updating, lives that needed protecting. And starting in 2 weeks, that would be his responsibility. Noah thought about the path that had led him here. Sarah's death. Years of struggling, one moment of courage in front of a burning building, and now this. An opportunity so far beyond anything he'd imagined that it still felt surreal. He pulled out his phone and looked at the employment contract Richard had emailed him. Pages of legal language that he'd need to read carefully, but there at the top was his name. Noah Bennett, Director of Building Safety and Emergency Response. Who was he to think he could do this? A high school graduate who'd spent his whole adult life turning wrenches and changing oil. What did he know about corporate structures and safety protocols and managing teams? But then he remembered Jensen's face when he'd pointed out the flaw in the emergency lighting system. Remembered Madeline's words about integrity and courage being more valuable than credentials. Remembered that moment in the Oakmont hallway when he'd kicked down that door because someone needed help, and he was the only one willing to provide it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than enough. Noah saved the contract and went inside, climbing the stairs to check on Caleb one more time. His son slept peacefully, his face relaxed in a way it hadn't been since the fire. Tomorrow Noah would call Martinez and give his notice. Tomorrow he'd start figuring out how to be director of building safety for a billion-dollar company. But tonight, he was just a father watching his son sleep. Just a man who'd made a choice and was trying to believe it was the right one. Sarah's voice echoed in his memory, warm and certain. You're the guy who runs toward trouble, Noah. Always have been. Don't ever apologize for that. He wasn't apologizing. Not anymore. He was just getting started. The 2 weeks between accepting the position and actually starting it passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Noah spent his days finishing up work at Martinez Auto Repair, training his replacement, a young kid named Danny who had good hands but still thought he knew everything, and his nights reading everything Richard sent him about building codes, fire safety regulations, and cross-industries corporate structure. Martinez had taken the news better than Noah expected. The older man had looked at him across the garage bay, grease-stained and tired, and said, I always knew you were too smart to spend your whole life under cars, Bennett. Go make something of yourself. Just don't forget where you came from. Noah promised he wouldn't, though part of him wondered if that was even possible. The world he was stepping into felt so far removed from this garage, with its smell of motor oil and its calendar girls, that Martinez refused to take down despite Carla from the front office complaining about them monthly. On his last day, the guys threw him a party of sorts, pizza and beer after hours. Stories about the worst repairs they'd tackled together. Promises to stay in touch that they'd probably keep for a few months before life got in the way. Danny gave him a wrench set as a going-away present. So you don't forget how to use your hands, the kid said, trying to sound tough but clearly emotional. When you're up in your fancy office, pushing papers. Noah accepted it with gratitude he couldn't quite voice. These people had been his family for 8 years. They'd brought casseroles when Sarah died, had slipped him extra hours when money was tight, had made sure Caleb had Christmas presents even when Noah couldn't afford them. Leaving felt like betrayal, even though they all insisted it wasn't. His first official day at Cross Industries started with an orientation that made him feel like he'd enrolled in a college course he wasn't qualified for. HR walked him through benefits packages, health insurance options that included things like executive wellness programs and concierge medical services that sounded made up. Richard showed him his office on the 27th floor, smaller than Madeline's but still 3 times the size of his living room, with windows facing west toward the mountains and furniture that probably cost more than his car. "This is too much," Noah said, standing in the doorway like entering might make it all real. "It's standard for director level," Richard assured him. "You should see the VP suites. They have private bathrooms with showers." He gestured to the desk, where a new laptop sat next to a phone with more buttons than seemed necessary. "Your credentials are all set up. It will come by this afternoon to walk you through the systems, and Madeline wants to see you at 10 for your first official meeting." After Richard left, Noah sat in his desk chair, leather, ergonomic, probably designed by someone with a PhD in sitting, and looked around at his new reality. Framed prints on the walls, a bookshelf waiting to be filled, a view that made Portland look like a toy city. His phone buzzed. A text from Caleb sent from Mrs. Henderson's phone. "Good luck on your first day, Dad. You're the best." The misspelling made Noah smile. He texted back a heart emoji, then felt immediately self-conscious about it. Was he supposed to use emojis in his new life? Did directors send heart emojis to their kids? He was still overthinking this when Madeline appeared in his doorway. She wore a navy blue suit today, her hair down instead of pulled back, the bandage on her cheek replaced by a small flesh-colored patch that was barely noticeable. "Settling in?" she asked. "Trying to figure out how to deserve this office," Noah admitted. "By doing the work." She entered, moving to his window. "Good view. You can see Mount Hood on clear days. I specifically requested this office for you." "Why?" "Because I want you to have a physical reminder of what's at stake. Out there," she gestured to the city below, "are all our properties. All the people living and working in them. That's not abstract. That's real. Every decision you make affects them." Noah joined her at the window. From this height, he could see the construction crane where the Oakmont had stood. They were already demolishing the damaged building, preparing to build something new. "No pressure, then." "Welcome to leadership." Madeline's tone was wry. "Come on, we have a meeting with Jensen and his team. They've finished revising the emergency power systems based on your input. I want you to sign off before we proceed." The conference room on the 28th floor was already full when they arrived. Jensen sat at the head of the table with 3 other engineers, all of them surrounded by laptops and tablets and enough technical documentation to fill a library. They stood when Madeline entered, a gesture of respect that seemed almost automatic. "Tom, everyone, you remember Noah Bennett." Madeline took her seat at the table's head, gesturing for Noah to sit beside her. "He'll be reviewing all our safety implementations going forward. Treat his approval as equivalent to mine." Noah caught the flicker of surprise on a few faces. One of the younger engineers, a woman with red hair pulled back in a severe bun, looked openly skeptical. But Jensen just nodded and launched into a presentation about the revised power redundancy systems. For the next 2 hours, Noah listened to technical specifications and engineering analyses that were mostly over his head. But occasionally, Jensen would pause and say, "Noah, does this make sense from a practical standpoint?" And Noah would think about it, really think about it, applying his mechanics' logic to their engineers' solutions. "The solar panels are good," he said during one such pause. "But what about winter? Portland gets, 3 months of real sunlight? You need battery capacity to handle extended cloudy periods." The red-haired engineer, her name tag read Sarah Chen, spoke up for the first time. "The batteries are rated for 72 hours of operation without charging. And if we get a week of clouds followed by a snowstorm that knocks out power," Noah challenged, "then an emergency happens on day 8? Sarah's expression shifted from skeptical to interested. "He's right. We need larger battery banks. It'll increase costs, but the redundancy is worth it." "Make it happen," Madeline said. "What else, Noah?" He felt their eyes on him, waiting, evaluating, wondering if he was really qualified for this, or if he was just the CEO's pet project. The weight of their judgment pressed down like physical force. But then he thought about the Oakmont hallway, the smoke and heat, the wet, struggling breathing that had led him to Madeline, the absolute certainty in that moment that doing the right thing mattered more than looking smart or avoiding mistakes. The emergency lighting placement, he said, pointing to one of the architectural drawings projected on the wall. You've got fixtures every 20 feet along the main corridors. What about the stairwells? Stairwells have their own emergency lighting, Jensen said. Code requires them at every landing. But if everyone's trying to evacuate at once, those stairwells are going to be packed, people panicking, pushing. What happens when someone falls and blocks the stairs? Noah stood and moved closer to the projection.
You need lighting at multiple levels: ceiling, wall, floor. So even if the main fixtures are blocked by bodies or smoke, there's still illumination to guide people. Silence filled the room. Then Jensen said quietly, "That's brilliant. Simple, but brilliant. Why didn't we think of that?" "Because you're engineers," Noah said, not unkindly. "You think about optimal conditions. I think about when everything goes wrong." Sarah Chen pulled up her tablet and started typing rapidly. Multi-level emergency lighting. We can integrate LED strips at floor level, maintain the ceiling fixtures for primary illumination, and add wall-mounted directional markers at eye level. It'll be visible even through moderate smoke density. Cost impact? Madeline asked. Maybe 15% increase on lighting budget for affected buildings, Sarah said, still typing. But the safety improvement is substantial. We should implement this across all high-traffic facilities. The meeting continued, and gradually Noah felt the room's energy shift. They weren't humoring him anymore. They were listening, collaborating. By the time they broke for lunch, he'd contributed to revisions on emergency signage, evacuation route optimization, and fire door maintenance protocols. As people filed out, Jensen approached him. "That was good work in there, Noah. Really good. I'm sorry if we seemed skeptical at first. It's just, I'm a mechanic without a degree in a room full of engineers," Noah finished. "I get it, but I know what I'm talking about when it comes to things going wrong." "You do." Jensen extended his hand. "I'm looking forward to working with you, genuinely." After Jensen left, Madeline remained studying Noah with those penetrating gray eyes. "You handled that well. Not everyone could walk into a room full of experts and hold their own." "I was terrified," Noah admitted. "Good. Means you're taking it seriously." She stood, gathering her tablet. "Come on, we're doing site visits this afternoon. I want you to see the properties we're working with." They started with a residential building in Northwest Portland, a sleek modern complex that catered to young professionals with money to spend on exposed brick and rooftop gardens. The building manager, a nervous man in his 40s named Dale, met them in the lobby and immediately launched into a defensive explanation about how they followed all regulations. "We're not here to criticize," Madeline interrupted gently. "We're here to learn. Noah is our new director of building safety. He'll be conducting assessments of all our properties." Dale looked at Noah with visible relief. Maybe he'd expected an auditor with a clipboard and a superior attitude. Instead, he got a guy in khakis and a button-down who asked basic questions and actually listened to the answers. Noah spent an hour walking through the building, examining fire extinguishers, testing emergency lighting, checking fire doors and exit signage. Most of it was compliant, well-maintained, but in the basement parking garage he found problems. "This emergency exit," he said, pointing to a door partially blocked by stored maintenance equipment. "It's obstructed." "That's just temporary," Dale said quickly. "We're reorganizing our storage. It'll be moved by end of week." "What if there's an emergency before end of week?" Noah pulled out his phone and took several photos. "This needs to be cleared today. Not tomorrow. Today." Dale started to argue, but Madeline cut him off. "You heard him. Today. And I want photographic proof it's been cleared sent to Noah's email by 5 p.m. "Yes, Miss Cross, of course." Dale looked chastened. "I'm sorry, I didn't think—" "That's the problem," Noah said, not unkindly. "People don't think about emergencies until they're in one. Then it's too late." He gestured to the blocked exit. "Clear this. Check all your other exits. If I find anything like this on my next visit, we'll be having a different conversation." They visited 4 more properties that afternoon: an office building downtown, a mixed-use development in the Pearl District, A warehouse in Southeast that made Noah's skin crawl with its outdated electrical systems, and finally a historic building that Cross Industries was renovating into luxury condos. At each location, Noah found things. Small things, mostly. Blocked exits, expired extinguishers, emergency lighting that hadn't been tested in months. But also bigger issues. The warehouse needed its entire electrical system replaced. The historic building's renovation plans showed beautiful exposed beams but inadequate fire suppression coverage. By the time they returned to headquarters, it was after 6. The building had emptied out, leaving just the dedicated and the desperate still at their desks. Madeline led Noah to her office, poured 2 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher, and sank into one of her leather chairs with visible exhaustion. "You did good work today," she said. "Thorough, professional, firm without being aggressive. Dale was terrified of you by the end." "I wasn't trying to scare him," Noah said. "I just wanted him to understand why it matters." "You succeeded." Madeline sipped her water, studying him over the rim of the glass. "What did you think? Honestly?" "I think we have a lot of work to do," Noah said. "Most of what I saw today was compliant with regulations, but compliant isn't the same as safe. We need to do better." "Show me." Noah pulled out his phone and opened the photos he'd taken. "This warehouse, the one in Southeast. Even if we replace the electrical systems, the layout is fundamentally unsafe. The exits are at opposite ends of the building, which means if a fire starts in the middle, you've got people trying to evacuate in both directions through smoke and heat. We need additional emergency exits, mid-building, on both sides." "That'll require structural modifications," Madeline said. "Expensive ones." "Cheaper than lawsuits when someone dies," Noah said bluntly. "And definitely cheaper than the PR nightmare when it comes out that we knew about the problem and did nothing." Madeline was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. Draft a proposal. I'll take it to the board." They spent another hour going through Noah's findings, prioritizing issues, discussing solutions. Madeline asked sharp questions that forced Noah to think through his recommendations, to justify his concerns with more than just gut instinct. It was challenging in a way he hadn't expected, intellectually demanding, requiring him to articulate the practical knowledge he'd always just known. "You're good at this," Madeline said finally, closing her tablet, "at breaking down complex problems into actionable steps." "It's just troubleshooting," Noah said. "Same thing I did with cars. Find the problem, figure out the fix, implement it. Except the stakes are higher." "Yeah." Noah thought about the people living in those buildings, working in those offices, parking in those garages. "The stakes are a lot higher." Madeline stood and moved to her window, looking out at Portland's evening lights. The city sparkled below them, beautiful and fragile and full of people going about their lives completely unaware of the man in this office who was now responsible for their safety. "Can I tell you something?" she asked without turning around. "Of course." "I haven't slept well since the fire." Her voice was quiet, vulnerable in a way Noah hadn't heard before. "Every night, I close my eyes, and I'm back in that apartment. The smoke, the heat, the certainty that I was going to die. And then I wake up, and I'm here, in this office, with all this responsibility, and I wonder if I'm doing enough. If all these plans and programs and safety initiatives will actually matter when the next emergency happens." Noah joined her at the window. "They'll matter." "How do you know?" "Because you care," he said simply. "That's the difference. You're not doing this because it looks good or because it's profitable. You're doing it because you understand what happens when we fail." "We both do," Madeline said, and there was something in her voice, a recognition maybe of the bond they'd formed in that fire. Two people who'd been through something terrible together and emerged changed. They stood there in silence for a while, looking out at the city. Noah was aware of her presence beside him in a way he hadn't been before, not just as his boss or as the woman he'd saved, but as a person. Someone who carried her own scars, her own fears, her own determination to make things right. "You should go home," Madeline said finally. "It's late. Caleb will be wondering where you are." "What about you?" "I'll be here a while longer. I have quarterly reports to review." "Madeline," Noah said, surprising himself by using her first name, "you need sleep too. The reports can wait." She turned to look at him, and in the soft light from the city below, her face looked younger somehow, less guarded.
Are you giving your boss orders, Mr. Bennett? I'm giving a friend advice, Miss Cross. The word hung between them. Friend. It felt presumptuous, too familiar. But Madeline smiled, and the expression transformed her face. All right, friend, I'll go home. But only because you're right, and I hate admitting it. They rode the elevator down together, and Diana was waiting with the car even though it was long past normal hours. She drove Noah home first, and as he was getting out, Madeline said, "Same time tomorrow. We have 3 more properties to visit, and I want your assessment of the downtown office complex." "I'll be there," Noah promised. The weeks that followed established a rhythm. Noah would arrive at the office early, spend mornings in meetings with engineers and architects and project managers, have lunch at his desk while reviewing technical specifications. He was slowly learning to understand and spend afternoons doing site visits with Madeline. The site visits became his favorite part of the day. Out in the field, away from conference rooms and PowerPoint presentations, he felt competent, useful. He could point to a fire door and explain why its closer mechanism needed adjustment. He could test emergency lighting and know instantly if it was adequate. He could walk through a building and sense its weaknesses the way he'd once sensed a car's problems from the sound of its engine. And Madeline, she was the revelation in these visits. In her office, she was all business, decisive, commanding, occasionally intimidating. But in the buildings, talking to managers and maintenance staff, she became warmer, more accessible. She remembered names, asked about families, made people feel like they mattered. "You're good with people," Noah commented one day as they left a property where the manager had been initially hostile and left practically eating out of Madeline's hand. "I have to be," she said. "My father taught me that a company is only as good as its people. Not the executives or the board, but the ones doing the actual work. Respect them, listen to them, and they'll follow you anywhere." "He sounds like he was a good man." "He was." Madeline's voice carried that familiar note of old grief. "He would have liked you, I think. You're practical like he was. No nonsense, focused on what actually matters instead of what looks impressive." They were in the car, Diana driving them back to headquarters, and Noah felt the weight of the compliment. "Thank you." "I'm serious," Madeline continued. "In the 3 weeks you've been here, you've already identified more legitimate safety issues than our previous facilities manager found in 2 years. Jensen says you're the best thing that's happened to his department. Even Sarah Chen, who never likes anyone, told me yesterday that your input is invaluable." "Sarah's warming up to me?" "She respects you. For Sarah, that's practically effusive affection." Madeline smiled. "You've earned your place here, Noah. I hope you know that." But respect from colleagues was one thing. Respect from the board was another matter entirely. Noah's first board presentation happened on a Thursday in late autumn. Madeline had prepared him as much as possible, coaching him on how to present findings, how to handle questions, how to deal with board members who would see him as an outsider and a threat to their bottom line. "They're going to push back on costs," she warned him the night before. "Especially Morrison. He's old school, believes in minimal compliance and maximum profit. Don't let him bully you." The boardroom was on the 30th floor, all dark wood and leather chairs and a table that could seat 20. The board members were exactly what Noah expected, mostly men in their 50s and 60s, expensive suits, the kind of casual arrogance that came from decades of being listened to. Morrison turned out to be a silver-haired man with cold eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. He looked at Noah the way someone might examine a bug under glass, with clinical detachment and faint distaste. "Mr. Bennett," he said when Madeline introduced Noah. "The mechanic. Director of Building Safety," Madeline corrected sharply. "Noah has been conducting comprehensive assessments of our properties. He's here to present his findings and recommendations." Noah stood at the head of the table, pulling up his presentation on the massive screen behind him. His hands wanted to shake, but he forced them steady. These people might have money and power, but he had something they didn't. He'd been in the fire. He'd felt what happened when their systems failed. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice stronger than he felt. "Over the past 3 weeks, I've visited 47 of our properties across Oregon and Washington. I've identified approximately 200 safety issues ranging from minor to critical. Today I'm going to walk you through the most serious findings and my recommendations for addressing them." He clicked to the first slide.
a photo of the Southeast warehouse with its outdated electrical systems. This facility represents our highest risk. The electrical infrastructure is 40 years old, has been repeatedly patched rather than properly upgraded, and is operating at 80% of its rated capacity. The fire risk is substantial. We've had that building inspected twice in the past 5 years, Morrison interrupted. It passed both times. It passed because inspectors checked for code compliance, not actual safety, Noah said evenly. Code is the minimum standard, Mr. Morrison. It's the lowest bar we're legally required to clear. I'm not interested in minimum standards when people's lives are at stake. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. Morrison's eyes narrowed. And what do you propose? Spending millions to replace systems that are technically functional? Yes. Noah clicked to the next slide. Cost estimates for the electrical upgrade. $8.3 million to completely replace the electrical infrastructure, add redundant systems, and bring the facility up to current best practices. Or we can wait until there's a fire, shut the building down, face lawsuits and criminal negligence charges, and spend 3 times that much on settlements. That's speculative, Morrison said. You can't know there will be a fire. You're right. I can't know. But I can calculate risk, and the risk here is unacceptable. Noah met Morrison's eyes directly. I was pulled from a burning building 3 weeks ago. I watched firefighters battle a blaze that nearly killed me and Ms. Cross. That building had passed inspections too. It was technically compliant, and it still almost killed people. The room went quiet. Even Morrison seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Madeline spoke into the silence. Noah's recommendations are based on practical experience and genuine concern for safety. I'm asking this board to approve his proposals, starting with the most critical facilities. All of them? A woman board member, Patterson, Noah remembered, spoke up. That's $160 million over 3 years. Yes, Madeline said simply. It's expensive, it's necessary, and it's what we're going to do. The debate that followed was intense. Morrison led the opposition, arguing about costs and shareholder returns and maintaining competitive profit margins. But other board members, particularly Patterson and a younger man named Kim, supported Noah's proposals, asking detailed questions about implementation timelines and expected outcomes. Noah answered each question as honestly as he could, admitting when he didn't know something but explaining his reasoning when he did. He showed them photos of blocked exits, failed emergency lighting, inadequate fire suppression systems. He walked them through worst-case scenarios, not to scare them, but to make them understand what was at stake. By the end of his presentation, even Morrison looked grudgingly impressed, though he maintained his opposition to the costs. The vote came down to a narrow margin, 7-5 in favor of approving Phase 1 of Noah's proposals, which covered the most critical facilities. It wasn't everything he'd asked for, but it was a start. You did well in there, Madeline said afterward, back in her office. Morrison is never going to like you, but you earned respect today. That's more important. I thought I was going to throw up, Noah admitted, collapsing into one of her chairs. You didn't show it. You presented your findings clearly, backed up your recommendations with evidence, and didn't back down when challenged. That's exactly what a director should do. She poured 2 glasses of water. It had become their ritual after difficult meetings. I'm proud of you, Noah. The words hit harder than they should have. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of him? Sarah, maybe, years ago. But since then it had just been survival, getting through each day, taking care of Caleb, trying not to drown in responsibility and grief. Thank you, he said quietly, for this opportunity, for believing in me, for everything. You've earned it, Madeline said, and the way she looked at him made something shift in Noah's chest, something he wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. They fell into a routine of late-night planning sessions after that board meeting. 2 or 3 times a week, after everyone else had gone home, Noah would end up in Madeline's office reviewing proposals or discussing strategy or just talking about the work, about what they were trying to build, about the culture they wanted to create. These conversations ranged from technical to personal. Madeline told him about her years building the company, about the sacrifices she'd made, relationships that failed because she worked too much, friendships that faded because she didn't have time, about the loneliness of being at the top, of making decisions that affected thousands of people,
of never being sure if people liked her or just her money and power. Noah told her about Sarah, about meeting her in college, about their wedding in a tiny chapel with 15 people attending, about watching her slowly fade during the cancer treatment, about the guilt he still carried, that maybe if he'd had better insurance, if he'd made more money, if he'd been able to afford better doctors, she might have lived. "You can't think like that," Madeline said softly one evening as they sat in her office watching the city lights. "You did everything you could with what you had. Sarah knew you loved her. That's what mattered." "I hope so," Noah said. "Some days I'm not sure." "Caleb knows," Madeline said. "The way you talk about him, the way you've built your life around giving him stability, that's love. That's honoring her memory." They talked about Caleb often, about how he was adjusting to Noah's new job, about his soccer games that Noah now had flexibility to attend, about the security of knowing they had health insurance and a savings account and didn't have to worry about making rent. "You should bring him by sometime," Madeline suggested one evening. "Let him see where his dad works. I'd like to meet him properly." So the following Saturday, Noah brought Caleb to the office. The building was mostly empty, just security guards and a few weekend warriors catching up on work. Caleb's eyes went wide when they entered the lobby with its marble floors and modern art. "Dad, this is where you work?" His voice echoed in the vast space. 27th floor, Noah confirmed, leading him to the elevator. Madeline met them at Noah's office, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that made her look younger, more approachable. "You must be Caleb. I've heard so much about you." Caleb studied her with the serious scrutiny only children can manage. "You're the lady from the fire." "I am," Madeline confirmed. "Your dad saved my life." "I know, he's good at that." Caleb moved closer to Noah. "Are you okay now? Did your burns heal?" "They did, thanks to your father getting me out when he did." Madeline knelt down to Caleb's level. "You know what? Your dad is doing really important work here. He's making sure other people don't have to go through what we did." "Like a superhero," Caleb said, and Noah felt his face heat with embarrassment. "Exactly like a superhero," Madeline agreed. "Want to see what superheroes do in tall buildings?" She spent an hour showing Caleb around. His dad's office with its mountain view, the break room with its fancy coffee machines, the conference room where important meetings happened. She explained what Noah did in terms an 8-year-old could understand, making it sound exciting and important and heroic. Noah watched them interact, Madeline patient and warm with his son, Caleb gradually relaxing and asking questions with his usual endless curiosity. Something in his chest tightened, a feeling he couldn't quite name. Not attraction, exactly, though he'd be lying if he said he hadn't noticed how her smile changed her whole face, how her intelligence and passion made her compelling in ways that had nothing to do with her looks or money. No, this was something else, something like recognition, like two people who'd been through trauma together finding unexpected companionship in its aftermath. "Your dad's pretty great," Madeline said to Caleb as they stood at Noah's window looking out at Mount Hood. "You're lucky to have him." "I know," Caleb said seriously. "He's all I have left, so he's not allowed to run into any more burning buildings." Madeline glanced at Noah, something soft in her expression. "I'll make sure he doesn't have to. That's part of what we're doing here, making sure the buildings don't burn in the first place." After they left, driving home with Caleb chattering about Ms. Cross's fancy office and all the cool safety equipment she'd shown him, Noah felt something shift. A door opening in his heart that he'd kept closed since Sarah died. Not love. It was too soon for that. Maybe would always be too soon. But possibility. The chance that maybe, eventually, there could be something more than just work between him and Madeline. The thought terrified him almost as much as the fire had. Over the following weeks, Noah threw himself into the work with renewed focus. Phase 1 implementations began, starting with the Southeast Warehouse's electrical overhaul. He spent days on site, working with contractors and engineers, making sure every detail was right. Madeline often joined him, rolling up her sleeves and climbing through construction zones in designer jeans and safety helmets that probably cost more than Noah's first car. They made a good team. Noah provided practical insight and mechanical knowledge. Madeline handled budgets and contractors and bureaucratic obstacles. Together, they pushed the project forward faster than anyone expected.
You're a natural leader, Sarah Chen told Noah one day on site. She'd started joining their inspections, bringing her engineering expertise to complement Noah's practical knowledge. The contractors respect you. They listen when you talk. Because I've actually done this kind of work, Noah said. I speak their language. It's more than that, Sarah insisted. You give a damn. They can tell. Maybe she was right. Noah did give a damn about the work, about the people whose safety depended on getting it right, about building something that would last beyond his time here. And increasingly, he gave a damn about Madeline, about her vision, her determination, the way she'd transformed her own near-death experience into a mission that could save countless lives. They were working late one evening in early December, reviewing Phase 2 proposals in Madeline's office, while snow fell softly outside, when she suddenly said, "Can I ask you something personal?" Noah looked up from his laptop. "Sure. Are you happy? With this job, this life? I know it's been a huge change from the garage." He considered the question seriously. Was he happy? He made more money than he'd ever imagined. He did work that mattered. He had colleagues who respected him. Caleb was thriving, secure and confident in ways he hadn't been before. But there was something else too. Something about these late nights with Madeline, about the easy companionship they'd developed, about the way she looked at him sometimes like he was more than just an employee. "I'm happy," he said finally, "more than I've been since Sarah died. This job, what we're building here, it gives me purpose, makes me feel like I'm making a difference." "You are," Madeline said softly. "More than you know." They held each other's gaze for a moment too long, and Noah felt that shift again. That door opening wider, possibility becoming something more tangible. Then Madeline's phone buzzed with an alert, and the moment passed. But something had changed between them, something neither was quite ready to acknowledge, but both felt building like pressure before a storm. The work continued. Phase 1 completed on schedule and under budget. Phase 2 launched with board approval, buoyed by positive media coverage about Cross Industries' commitment to safety. Noah's reputation grew, not just within the company, but in the wider industry. He got invited to speak at safety conferences, to consult on other companies' building assessments, to write articles for trade publications. "You're becoming famous," Madeline teased one evening, showing him an article in a building management magazine that called him the practical philosopher of fire safety. "That's ridiculous," Noah said, embarrassed. "It's accurate. You've changed how people think about safety. You've made it about more than just compliance and checklists. You've made it about humanity." She looked at him with something that might have been pride or might have been something deeper. "You've changed me too, Noah. Made me remember why this company exists, what my father would have wanted it to be." "I think you'd have remembered that anyway," Noah said. "The fire just gave you the push you needed." "Maybe. But you've been here for every step since, working beside me, believing in this mission, helping make it real." She paused, seeming to wrestle with words. "I don't know if I've said this enough, but thank you. For everything. For saving my life that night. For taking this job when you had every reason not to. For being exactly who you are." Noah felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You've given me more than I've given you. A career, security for my son, purpose. I should be thanking you." "Then let's call it even," Madeline said, smiling. "Partners in building something that matters." Partners. The word felt right. They were partners, in work, certainly, but increasingly in something else. Something neither had named yet, but both felt growing stronger with each late night, each shared victory, each moment of understanding that passed between them. Snow fell heavier outside, and Portland transformed into a winter wonderland below them. Noah thought about the path that had led here, through grief and struggle, and one moment of desperate courage, about how saving one life had somehow saved his own, too. He wasn't ready for what came next, wasn't ready to open his heart fully, to risk the kind of pain that came with loving someone when you'd already lost everything once. But maybe, just maybe, he was ready to try. And from the way Madeline looked at him in the soft office light, snow falling outside like a benediction, she was ready too. Winter deepened over Portland, and with it came the kind of clarity that only cold air and short days could bring. Noah found himself thinking more about the future, not just the next inspection or the next board meeting, but the actual shape his life might take. For 4 years since Sarah's death, he'd been in survival mode, each day about getting through to the next. Now, for the first time, he could imagine something more. The fire prevention program's success exceeded even Madeline's ambitious projections. By January, they'd completed Phase 1 across all critical facilities and were halfway through Phase 2. The media attention brought consulting requests from other companies, and Madeline had begun developing a certification program that could become an industry standard. "We're creating a legacy," she told Noah one morning in her office, reviewing proposals for Phase 3, "something that will outlive both of us, something that actually matters." Noah studied the woman across from him, her gray eyes bright with enthusiasm, her hands gesturing as she explained her vision for expansion. The bandage was long gone from her cheek, leaving only a faint scar that she'd decided not to have removed. "Reminders are important," she'd said when he'd asked about it. "This one tells me why I do what I do." They'd grown close over these months, closer than Noah had been with anyone since Sarah. Their relationship existed in a strange space between professional and personal, between partnership and something that felt increasingly like more. They never discussed it directly, never acknowledged the way their hands would brush when reviewing documents, or the way their conversations would drift from work to philosophy to dreams neither had shared with anyone else. Mrs. Henderson noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "You talk about her a lot," she commented one Sunday when she'd come over for dinner, a tradition they'd maintained even as Noah's life had transformed. Caleb was in the living room, absorbed in a book about volcanoes, giving them a moment of privacy in the kitchen. "She's my boss," Noah said, focusing intently on stirring the pasta sauce. "We work together closely." "Mm-hmm." Mrs. Henderson's tone suggested she wasn't buying it. "And is that why you smile every time your phone buzzes with a message from her? Because she's your boss?" Noah's hand stilled on the spoon. "I'm not ready for that, Candace. I don't know if I'll ever be ready." "Sarah wouldn't want you to spend your life alone," Mrs. Henderson said gently. "She'd want you to be happy, to find someone who sees how extraordinary you are." "Madeline is way out of my league," Noah said, voicing the fear that had lived in his chest for months. "She's brilliant, powerful, wealthy, and you're the man who ran into a burning building to save her life without a second thought," Mrs. Henderson interrupted. "The man who transformed his entire career because he believed in doing the right thing. The man who's raising a beautiful son while building something that saves lives." She touched his arm. "Don't sell yourself short, Noah Bennett. You're a catch, mechanic background and all." But it wasn't just about whether he was good enough for Madeline. It was about whether he could risk his heart again, knowing how much it had cost to lose Sarah. It was about whether opening that door meant betraying the woman he'd loved first, the woman whose memory still made him reach for empty space in bed some mornings. The answer came unexpectedly on a Tuesday in late January. Caleb had been invited to a sleepover at his friend Marcus's house, his first since Sarah had died. Noah had been hesitant, old fears about something happening while he wasn't there making him want to refuse, but Caleb had looked at him with those serious eyes and said, "Dad, I'm not a baby. I'll be fine. You have to let me do things sometimes." The words hit Noah like a revelation. His son was right. He'd been so focused on protecting Caleb from loss that he'd been protecting him from life. And if that was true about parenting, maybe it was true about other things too. So he'd said yes to the sleepover and found himself at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening with no plans and an empty house. He was standing in his kitchen trying to decide between leftover pizza and actually cooking when his phone rang. Madeline's name lit up the screen. "Hey," he answered. "What's up? Are you busy tonight?" Her voice carried a note of uncertainty he rarely heard. "I know it's last minute, but I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner. Not work dinner, just dinner, as friends." Noah's heart did something complicated in his chest. "Caleb's at a sleepover. I'm actually free." "Really? That's great." Was she nervous? "There's this Italian place in the Pearl District, Osteria Nonna. Do you know it?" "I've walked past it about 100 times but never been inside, because it was the kind of place where entrees cost what he used to spend on groceries for a week." "Meet me there at 8?" Madeline asked. "And Noah, wear something nice. Not for me, for yourself."
You deserve to feel good in a place like that. After she hung up, Noah stood in his kitchen for a full minute, processing what had just happened. Then he took the stairs 2 at a time to his bedroom and opened his closet. He'd bought a few new clothes since starting at Cross Industries. Decent shirts, a couple pairs of slacks that actually fit. In the back, protected by a garment bag, hung the one suit he owned. He'd bought it for Sarah's funeral and hadn't worn it since. He pulled it out, ran his hand over the dark fabric. Would Sarah be okay with this? Would she understand that moving forward didn't mean forgetting her? But he knew the answer. Sarah had always been practical, even in her grief about leaving them. "Promise me you'll find happiness again," she'd whispered near the end, her voice barely audible. "Promise me you won't stop living just because I have to." He'd promised. And maybe it was time to keep that promise. Osteria Nonna was everything he'd imagined. Intimate lighting, exposed brick walls, the kind of quiet elegance that spoke of money without shouting about it. The hostess led him to a corner table where Madeline already sat, and Noah's breath caught. She wore a deep blue dress that made her gray eyes luminous, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back in its usual professional style. She looked up when he approached, and her smile was warm and genuine and slightly nervous. "You came," she said, standing. "Of course I came." Noah suddenly wasn't sure if he should hug her or shake her hand or what the protocol was for dinner with your boss who might be becoming something more. Madeline solved the dilemma by kissing his cheek lightly, a gesture that felt European and sophisticated and made his face heat. They sat, and a waiter appeared immediately with menus and a wine list. Noah glanced at the prices and felt his old instincts kick in, the ones that calculated cost per meal and whether spending this much on dinner was responsible when it could go into Caleb's college fund. "Don't look at the prices," Madeline said quietly. "Please, this is my treat and I can afford it. Just order what sounds good." "This is too much," Noah protested. "It's not enough," Madeline countered. "Noah, you've given me back something I thought I'd lost. Purpose, direction, hope. Let me buy you dinner without it being complicated." So he did. He ordered pasta that came with truffle shavings and cost more than he used to make in a day. He drank wine that probably had vintages and regions and all sorts of things he knew nothing about. And he talked with Madeline, not about work, not about building codes or safety protocols, but about life. She told him about growing up wealthy, about the isolation that came with private schools and bodyguards, about never being sure if people liked her or her family's money, about the pressure of inheriting her father's company at 26, of being so young and so determined to prove herself that she'd sacrificed everything else. "I'm 41, she said, swirling wine in her glass. "I've built an empire. I've been on Forbes lists and magazine covers. I've succeeded by every measure that matters in business. But I don't have friends, not real ones. I haven't had a relationship that lasted more than 6 months in 15 years. I've been alone in every way that matters except professionally." "That sounds lonely," Noah said softly. "It was. It is." She met his eyes. "Until recently. Until I met someone who saw me. Not my money or my power or my company, but me. Who treated me like a person instead of a position." Noah felt the weight of what she wasn't quite saying. "Madeline, let me finish," she interrupted gently. "I know this is complicated. You're my employee, technically, though I've never thought of you that way. You're still grieving your wife. You have a son who needs stability. There are 1,000 reasons why this," she gestured between them, "shouldn't happen. But Noah, I can't stop thinking about you, about the conversations we have late at night in my office, about how you make me laugh with your dry observations about corporate culture, about how safe I feel when you're around, like nothing bad could happen because you just fix it with that quiet competence you have." Noah's heart hammered against his ribs. "I think about you too," he admitted, "more than I should, more than I know what to do with." "What are we going to do about it?" Madeline asked, and her voice carried vulnerability he'd never heard from her in any boardroom. "I don't know," Noah said honestly. "I'm terrified, if I'm being truthful. Sarah was my whole world. When she died, I thought that part of my life was over, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it, and that was just how things were. And now? Now I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe we get more than one chance.
Maybe running into that fire led me to more than just saving your life. He reached across the table, and Madeline met him halfway, her hand warm in his. But I'm scared of messing this up, of hurting you, of failing at this the way I failed at keeping Sarah alive. You didn't fail her, Madeline said firmly. Cancer failed her, medicine failed her, but you loved her with everything you had, and that's not failure. She squeezed his hand. And you're not going to hurt me by being honest about how you feel. We can take this slowly. We can figure it out together. We don't have to rush into anything. The waiter arrived with their entrees, and they separated, the moment broken but not lost. They ate and talked about lighter things, Caleb's obsession with volcanoes, Madeline's terrible attempts at learning to cook, Noah's ongoing bewilderment at office politics. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and comfortable silences that felt natural rather than awkward. Over dessert, tiramisu that Noah was pretty sure violated some law about how good food was allowed to taste, Madeline said, I'm launching the safety certification program in March. It's going to be big. National press, industry leaders, the whole thing. I want you there beside me, not as my employee, but as the co-founder of something that's going to change how buildings are maintained across the country. Co-founder? Noah raised his eyebrows. That's a bit much. This was all your vision. It was my vision, but you made it real. Your practical knowledge, your insistence on actually caring about people instead of just checking boxes, that's what transformed this from a corporate initiative into something meaningful. She pulled out her phone and showed him a press release draft. See? Developed by Madeline Cross and Noah Bennett, the Cross-Bennett Safety Certification Program represents a new standard in building safety and emergency preparedness. Noah stared at his name beside hers, feeling the weight of it. Cross-Bennett. Like they were a team. Like they were building something together that would outlast both of them. I don't deserve to have my name on this, he said. You absolutely do, Madeline insisted. And more than that, I want your name on it. I want people to know that this wasn't created in a boardroom by people who've never been in danger. This was created by someone who's been through the fire, literally, and came out the other side determined to make sure others don't have to. They left the restaurant near midnight, stepping out into Portland's cold January air. The city was quiet at this hour, just a few late-night stragglers and the ever-present hum of traffic. Diana was waiting with the car, but Madeline waved her off. I'd like to walk a bit, she said. If that's okay? Of course. They walked through the Pearl District, past galleries and boutiques closed for the night, past the renovated warehouses that now held expensive lofts. The streets were lit with that particular urban glow that made everything look slightly unreal, slightly magical. Tell me about her, Madeline said suddenly. About Sarah. Not the cancer, not the end. Tell me about who she was. Noah was quiet for a moment, gathering memories. She was practical, funny. She had this laugh that was completely unself-conscious, not polite or controlled, just pure joy. She loved bad reality TV and good books. She could fix anything, plumbing, electrical, whatever. Said she didn't trust mechanics except for cars, which is how we met. She brought her car in for an oil change and ended up explaining to me why my assessment of her brake pads was wrong. He smiled at the memory. She was right, of course. She sounds wonderful. She was. She made everything better just by being there. When she got sick, his voice caught. When she got sick, she stayed positive until the very end. Kept telling me it would be okay, that Caleb and I would be fine. She made me promise to keep living, to not get stuck in grief. He looked at Madeline. I think I broke that promise for a while. Just went through the motions, surviving but not really living. And now? Madeline asked softly. Now I think I'm starting to live again. Because of you. Because of this job, this purpose, this... He gestured between them. Whatever this is. I think I'm starting to live again too, Madeline admitted. I didn't realize how hollow my existence was until I almost lost it. Until someone risked everything to save it and made me see what actually matters. They stopped walking, finding themselves at a small park with a view of the Willamette River. The water reflected city lights, rippling and beautiful. Madeline turned to face Noah, and in the dim light she looked younger, more vulnerable.
Can I kiss you? She asked. I know it's fast. I know we said we'd take it slow, but I've wanted to for months, and Noah answered by closing the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that was gentle and questioning and full of possibility. She tasted like wine and tiramisu and something uniquely her. Her hands came up to frame his face, and he wrapped his arms around her waist, pulling her closer. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Madeline laughed, a sound of pure joy that reminded Noah of Sarah's unself-conscious laughter. That was worth waiting for, she said. Yeah, Noah agreed, his heart full in a way it hadn't been in years. It really was. They walked back to where Diana waited with the car, hands linked, not saying much because words felt unnecessary. At Noah's house, Madeline kissed him again, softer this time, sweeter, and said, "See you tomorrow at the office?" "Absolutely," Noah promised. Inside his empty house, Noah stood in the darkness for a long moment, processing what had just happened. He felt guilty and exhilarated in equal measure. Guilty because some part of him still felt like he was betraying Sarah, even though rationally he knew she'd want him to be happy. Exhilarated because for the first time in 4 years, he'd felt fully alive. He climbed the stairs to his bedroom and pulled out the photo he kept on his nightstand, Sarah on their wedding day, radiant and laughing. "I'm trying," he told her picture. "I'm trying to keep my promise. I hope that's okay." The photo didn't answer, of course, but somehow Noah felt like she'd given her blessing anyway. The weeks that followed established a new rhythm. Noah and Madeline continued working together professionally, still doing site visits, still reviewing proposals, still pushing the safety program forward. But now there was something more between them, acknowledged, if not fully defined. They had dinner once or twice a week, always somewhere quiet where they could talk without being interrupted. Madeline came to one of Caleb's soccer games, cheering from the sidelines with genuine enthusiasm. Noah met some of Madeline's friends, a small circle of people who'd known her before the money and power, who treated him with warmth rather than suspicion. "You're good for her," one of them, a woman named Patricia, who'd been Madeline's roommate in college, told Noah at a dinner party. "I haven't seen her this happy in years, maybe ever." "She's good for me too," Noah admitted. By February, the safety certification program was ready for launch. They'd spent months developing criteria, training assessors, establishing standards that went far beyond basic code compliance. The launch was scheduled for the first week of March. A major press conference, demonstrations of the new safety systems, presentations from industry leaders who'd adopted their approach. "This is going to be huge," Richard told Noah, reviewing the media list. "We've got coverage from every major business publication, several news networks, and at least 3 documentary crews interested in doing longer pieces." Noah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety. "I'm not good at public speaking." "You'll be fine," Madeline assured him. She'd been coaching him for weeks, helping him prepare remarks that felt authentic rather than corporate. "Just speak from the heart. Tell them why it matters. That's all anyone wants to hear." The night before the launch, Noah couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about the path that had led here. 6 months ago, he'd been a mechanic living paycheck to paycheck. Now he was about to stand in front of national media and present a program that could revolutionize building safety. It felt surreal, impossible, terrifying. His phone buzzed at 2 a.m. A text from Madeline. "Can't sleep either. Want to talk?" He called her, and her voice was warm in the darkness. "Big day tomorrow." "Huge day," Noah agreed. "I keep thinking I'm going to mess this up somehow. Forget what to say, freeze on camera, accidentally reveal that I'm just a mechanic pretending to be something more." "You're not pretending anything," Madeline said firmly. "You're the most genuine person I know. That's your strength, Noah. People trust you because you're real. Just be yourself tomorrow. That's more than enough." "What if I let you down?" "You won't. But even if you did, even if tomorrow was a complete disaster, it wouldn't change how I feel about you. About us." She paused. "I love you, Noah. I've been trying to find the right time to say it, but I realize there isn't a right time. There's just the truth. I love you." Noah's breath caught. He'd known, of course, had felt it in the way she looked at him, in her patience with Caleb, in the way she'd woven herself into his life so seamlessly it was hard to remember what things had been like before her.
But hearing her say it made it real in a way nothing else had. "I love you too," he said, and the words felt like stepping off a cliff, terrifying and exhilarating and completely right. I fought it for a long time because I felt guilty, like I was betraying Sarah's memory. But I know she'd want this for me. She'd want me to be happy. And Madeline, you make me happier than I've been in years. Good, Madeline said, and he could hear the smile in her voice, because I plan to keep making you happy for a very long time. They talked until 3 a.m., until Noah finally felt calm enough to sleep. And when he did, he dreamed not of fire and smoke, but of building something beautiful with hands that were equally comfortable with wrenches and blueprints, with someone beside him who understood both where he'd come from and where he was going. The launch day arrived with brilliant March sunshine that felt like a blessing. The event was held in the lobby of the renovated Oakmont building, rebuilt from the ashes of the fire, now featuring every safety innovation they'd developed. It was symbolic, Madeline had said. A phoenix rising, a second chance made tangible. Noah stood backstage, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. Caleb was in the front row with Mrs. Henderson, his small face serious with importance. Sarah Chen stood near the tech booth, double-checking that all the demonstration equipment was ready. Jensen reviewed notes for his technical presentation. And Madeline stood beside Noah, composed and professional in a gray suit, but her hand found his and squeezed. "Ready?" she asked. "No," Noah admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit of a hero," Madeline said, smiling. "Speaking of which, there's one more thing before we go out there." She led him to a quiet corner and pulled out a small velvet box. Noah's heart did a complicated thing. "This isn't what you think," Madeline said quickly, seeing his expression. "I'm not proposing. We've only been together a few months, and I know you need more time before anything like that. But I wanted to give you something, a symbol of what we've built together." She opened the box to reveal a simple silver pin, a flame enclosed in a circle, elegant and meaningful. "For the program. I had them made for everyone on the team, but yours is special. See the engraving?" Noah looked closer and saw tiny letters along the circle's edge. "Courage builds more than survival." "Those are your words," Madeline said, "from one of our first conversations. You said that courage could change lives, that it could build something lasting. You were right, and I wanted you to carry that reminder with you." Noah let her pin it to his lapel, blinking back unexpected emotion. "Thank you. For everything, for seeing something in me I didn't see in myself." "I only saw what was already there," Madeline said. She kissed him softly, a gesture of affection and partnership and promise. "Now, let's go change the industry." The presentation went better than Noah could have hoped. Madeline spoke first, outlining the program's vision with the polish of someone who'd given 1,000 presentations. Then Noah took the stage, and for a moment the lights and cameras and crowd of industry professionals made his mind go blank. Then he saw Caleb in the front row, giving him a thumbs up, saw Mrs. Henderson dabbing at her eyes, saw Sarah Chen and Jensen and all the people who'd worked so hard to make this real, and he found his voice. "6 months ago, I was a mechanic," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I fixed cars for a living. I was good at it, but I never thought I'd be standing here talking to you about building safety and emergency preparedness. Then something happened that changed my life. A fire. A decision to run toward danger instead of away from it. And that moment, that single moment of action, led to everything that came after." He told them about pulling Madeline from the burning building, about the failures that had led to that fire, about the choice to transform tragedy into purpose, to build something that would prevent others from facing the same danger. "This program isn't about regulations or compliance or checking boxes," Noah continued. "It's about recognizing that behind every building code and safety standard are real people. People with families, with dreams, with lives that matter. People who deserve to feel safe in their homes and workplaces. People who deserve to know that someone cared enough to do more than the minimum." He walked them through the key innovations, the multi-level emergency lighting, the redundant power systems, the enhanced evacuation protocols. He showed videos of the new technologies in action, explained how each element had been designed with real emergencies in mind. "We created this because we know what happens when systems fail," Noah said, his voice carrying the weight of lived experience. Because we've been in the fire, and we came out determined to make sure others don't have to face those flames. This isn't theoretical for us. It's personal. It's a promise we're making to every person who lives or works in a building we oversee. We will not let you down. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. Questions from the press came fast, about implementation timelines, about costs, about how other companies could adopt their standards. Noah and Madeline answered together, their responses complementing each other seamlessly. They'd become a true team, each bringing their strengths to create something neither could have built alone. After the formal presentations, there was a reception, catered food, networking, industry leaders wanting to discuss partnerships. Noah found himself surrounded by people who treated him like an expert, who asked his opinion like it mattered, who respected him not despite his background, but because of it.
"You were brilliant up there," Sarah Chin told him, appearing at his elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "Genuinely inspiring. I'm not easily impressed, but you impressed me." "Coming from you, that means a lot," Noah said sincerely. Across the room, Madeline was being interviewed by a documentary crew. Noah watched her, poised and articulate, passionate about the work they'd done, and felt a surge of pride mixed with something deeper. Love, yes, but also gratitude, for the chance she'd given him, for seeing his potential when he couldn't see it himself, for being brave enough to build something real from the ashes of trauma. As if sensing his gaze, Madeline looked over and smiled. Then she said something to the interviewer and excused herself, crossing the room to join him. "Having fun?" she asked. "Surprisingly, yes," Noah admitted, "though I'll be glad when this is over and we can go back to actual work." About that, Madeline's expression turned serious.
"I have something to tell you. The board met this morning, emergency session before the launch. They voted to create a new position, Chief Safety Officer for Cross Industries, reporting directly to me with authority over all building operations worldwide." "That's great," Noah said, wondering why she looked nervous. "Who'd they choose?" "You, if you'll take it." Madeline spoke quickly, like she was afraid he'd interrupt. "It comes with a significant raise, stock options, a seat at the executive table. It would mean more responsibility, more travel, more pressure. But Noah, there's no one else I trust with this. No one else who cares the way you do, who understands what we're trying to build. Will you do it?" Noah felt the weight of the offer. Chief Safety Officer, executive level, a position that would cement his transformation from mechanic to corporate leader. It should have felt like a dream come true. Instead, he felt a moment of doubt. Would taking this position mean losing himself? Would it mean becoming the kind of person he'd always resented, disconnected from real work, making decisions from boardrooms without understanding their impact? Then he looked around the room, at the safety innovations on display, at the industry professionals discussing how to implement these standards in their own companies, at Caleb, who was examining a demonstration of the new emergency lighting system with wide-eyed fascination. This was real work, work that mattered, work that would save lives. And if he could do it without losing sight of why it mattered, if he could stay grounded in the practical reality of the people these systems would protect, then maybe he was exactly the right person for this role. "I'll do it," Noah said. "On one condition." "What's that?" "I still get to do site visits. I still get to get my hands dirty. I don't want to become someone who makes decisions from an office without understanding the reality on the ground." "Done," Madeline agreed immediately. "In fact, I insist on it. That perspective is what makes you valuable. Lose that, and you lose what makes you effective." She extended her hand formally, and Noah shook it. Then, because they were in a corner relatively shielded from view, he pulled her into a quick embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, "for believing in me, for building this with me, for being exactly who you are." "Thank you for running into that fire," Madeline whispered back. "For saving my life, for being brave enough to say yes to something completely outside your experience, for being you." The reception continued for another hour, and then finally, it was over. The press dispersed, the industry leaders made their goodbyes, and the crew began breaking down the demonstrations. Noah collected Caleb, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "Dad, that was so cool. You were on TV. My teacher said our whole class can watch the recording tomorrow." Caleb grabbed his hand. "Are you really the Chief Safety Officer now? That sounds even more important than director." It is more important, Noah confirmed. But it's still the same work, keeping people safe, just on a bigger scale. Like a superhero, Caleb said with satisfaction. I knew it. Mrs. Henderson hugged Noah tightly. Sarah would be so proud, she said, her voice thick with emotion. So very proud. And I'm proud too, Noah, of who you've become, of what you've built. You've earned every bit of this. After they left, after the building had been cleared and locked and secured with all the new safety systems they'd installed, Noah and Madeline stood alone in the empty lobby. The space still smelled like fresh paint and new carpet, but it also smelled like possibility, like second chances, like lives saved and futures secured. We did it, Madeline said softly. We actually did it. We did, Noah agreed. He looked around the lobby, at the multi-level emergency lighting, at the clearly marked exits, at the state-of-the-art fire suppression system visible through transparent panels. This is where it started, where everything changed. Where we saved each other, Madeline corrected. You saved my life that night. But Noah, you've saved it again every day since. You've given me purpose, direction, someone to build something meaningful with, someone to love who sees me, really sees me, not just the money or power. Noah turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. I was just surviving before, going through motions, taking care of Caleb, doing my job, but not really living. You changed that. You gave me a reason to be more than just a father or a mechanic. You made me believe I could be someone who makes a real difference. You always were that person, Madeline said. I just gave you a platform to show it. They stood there in the empty lobby. Two people brought together by fire and trauma, who'd transformed that crucible into something beautiful and lasting. A partnership that had become love. A moment of courage that had become a legacy. I want to show you something, Madeline said suddenly. She led him to the elevator, the same elevator he'd bypassed that night, knowing it would be a death trap. They rode up to the 4th floor, and she led him down a hallway that looked nothing like the inferno he remembered. Clean, bright, safe. She stopped at a door marked 4C. This is it. This is where you found me. Noah felt his chest tighten. He hadn't been back here since that night, hadn't wanted to face the memories. But now, looking at the renovated apartment with its reinforced door and updated safety systems, he felt something else. Pride, maybe. Or peace. I bought this unit, Madeline said, after the renovation. I'm not going to live here. I couldn't. It would be too strange. But I didn't want anyone else to have it either. It's too important. She unlocked the door and led him inside. The apartment was furnished now, not with the expensive minimalist design she could have afforded, but with comfortable lived-in pieces that looked like they belonged in a home rather than a showroom. Photos on the walls showed the building's transformation, before and after shots of every safety upgrade they'd implemented. But in the center of the living room, mounted on the wall like art, was a photograph Noah had never seen. It showed him emerging from the burning building, Madeline in his arms, both of them covered in ash and smoke. Someone in the crowd must have taken it, one of those people with their phones out, recording everything. In the photo, Noah's face was streaked with soot and twisted with determination. Madeline was unconscious, her body limp, but there was something else in the image, something about the way Noah held her, the fierce protectiveness in his posture, the absolute refusal to let go. Where did you get this? Noah asked, his voice rough with emotion. It went viral on social media that night. Hero mechanic saves woman from burning building. Millions of views. Madeline stood beside him, looking at the photo. I had it printed and framed because I never want to forget this moment. What you did. What it meant. What it led to. Beneath the photograph was a plaque with an inscription. This is where everything changed, where fear became courage, where survival became purpose, where two lives intersected and created something that would save thousands more. Remember this moment. Remember why we do what we do. Noah read the words and felt tears sting his eyes. This is beautiful. This is us, Madeline said. This is our origin story. The moment that made everything else possible. She turned to face him fully. I know we're taking this slowly. I know you need time, and I respect that. But Noah, I want you to know I'm in this, completely, for however long it takes, for whatever comes next. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Noah pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I love you too. And I'm done being scared, done holding back. Sarah told me to keep living, and for a long time I didn't understand what that meant. I thought it meant survival, just getting through each day. But it doesn't. It means this. It means opening my heart again. It means taking chances and building something real with someone who sees me and chooses me anyway. He kissed her then, deeply, thoroughly, with all the emotion he'd been holding back for months. And Madeline kissed him back with equal intensity, her arms wrapping around him like she was afraid he might disappear. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Madeline laughed, that unself-conscious sound of joy that Noah had learned to love. We should probably get out of here before someone sees us making out in an empty apartment. Probably, Noah agreed. But neither of them moved. They stood there in apartment 4C in the place where everything had changed, holding each other and imagining the future they were building together. The months that followed were full. Noah settled into his new role as Chief Safety Officer, traveling to Cross Industries properties around the world, implementing their standards, training teams, speaking at conferences. The Cross-Bennett Safety Certification Program became the industry gold standard, with dozens of companies adopting their approach. They prevented fires, saved lives, transformed how buildings were maintained and protected. But more than the professional success, Noah's personal life transformed. Madeline became a fixture at their Sunday dinners with Mrs. Henderson. She attended Caleb's soccer games and school plays. She met Sarah's parents and won them over with her genuine interest in their daughter's memory and her obvious love for Noah. She never tried to replace Sarah. She was smart enough to know that wasn't possible. But she carved out her own space in their family with grace and patience. By summer, she'd moved from being Ms. Cross to being Madeline to being simply part of us, in Caleb's words. The boy had warmed to her gradually, testing her with the wariness of a child who'd lost one mother and feared losing another adult he cared about. But Madeline had proven herself reliable, steady, present, in ways that mattered. I like her, Caleb told Noah one evening as they worked on homework together. She's different from Mom, but that's okay. I don't want her to be like Mom. I want her to be like Madeline. The words made Noah's heart feel too big for his chest. This was what moving forward looked like, honoring the past while building something new, making space for joy without forgetting grief, letting love in again without betraying what came before. 1 year after the fire, 1 year after the night that had changed everything, they held an anniversary ceremony at the rebuilt Oakmont. It was smaller than the launch event, more intimate. Just the team who'd made it all possible, some residents from the building, press coverage focused on the program's success rather than the spectacle. Noah stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. Madeline beside him. Caleb in the front row. Sarah Chen and Tom Jensen and all the engineers who'd turned vision into reality. Mrs. Henderson dabbing at her eyes again. And somewhere, he liked to think, Sarah was there too, proud of him, happy for him, grateful that he'd kept his promise to keep living. A year ago, Noah began, this building was burning. People were in danger. Systems had failed. And I made a choice to run toward that danger instead of away from it. I didn't know where that choice would lead. I didn't know it would transform my life, give me a new career, introduce me to someone I love. I just knew someone needed help, and I was there to provide it. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What we've built this year, the safety program, the certification standards, the cultural shift toward actually caring about people instead of just checking compliance boxes. All of it started with that one moment of action, of courage, of refusing to be a bystander while someone suffered. That's the lesson I want people to take from this, Noah continued. Not that I'm special or heroic or anything extraordinary, but that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when we choose action over inaction, when we choose compassion over convenience, when we choose to run toward trouble instead of away from it. He looked at Madeline, whose gray eyes shone with emotion. A year ago, I pulled a woman from a burning building, but in the months since, she's saved me too. She's given me purpose, partnership, love I didn't think I'd ever feel again. She's shown me that courage isn't just about running into fires. It's about opening your heart after loss. It's about trusting again. It's about building something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. Madeline stood and joined him at the podium, taking his hand. Noah saved my life that night, she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. But this... She gestured to the building around them, to the safety systems and the people they'd protected. This time, he saved it for good. Not just for me, but for everyone who lives and works in our buildings. For everyone who's safer, because one man decided that doing the right thing mattered more than staying safe. She turned to face him fully, speaking to him now rather than to the crowd. You ran into the fire for me once, but you've walked through flames with me every day since. Building this program, facing down skeptical boards, transforming an entire industry. You've been my partner, my inspiration, my reason to believe that something good can come from something terrible. Then, to Noah's complete shock, Madeline knelt down on one knee. The crowd gasped. Noah's heart stopped, and Madeline pulled out a small velvet box. Noah Bennett, she said, her voice shaking slightly with emotion and nerves. You are the bravest, most genuine, most extraordinary, ordinary man I've ever met. You've taught me what courage really means. You've shown me how to turn tragedy into purpose. You've loved me with a patience and grace I never deserved. She opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band. Will you marry me? Noah stood there stunned as the crowd erupted in cheers. Caleb was bouncing in his seat, clearly in on the secret. Mrs. Henderson was crying openly, and Madeline knelt before him, vulnerable and hopeful and beautiful. Yes, Noah said, his voice barely audible over the crowd. Then louder, yes, absolutely yes. He pulled her to her feet and kissed her as applause thundered around them. And in that moment, standing in the building where everything had changed, surrounded by the people they'd protected and the team who'd made it possible, with his son cheering and his future wife in his arms, Noah understood what Sarah had meant when she'd told him to keep living. This was living, not just surviving, but thriving, not just enduring, but embracing, not just getting through each day, but building something lasting, something beautiful, something that honored the past while celebrating the future. The fire had taken so much, but it had also given him this, a second chance at love, at purpose, at being more than he'd ever imagined. And as he held Madeline close, feeling her heart beat against his chest, Noah Bennett, former mechanic, current chief safety officer, future husband, eternal father, knew that he'd finally fulfilled his promise. He was living again. Truly, fully, courageously living. And it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been, but had always been searching for. A place where courage built more than survival. Where love could bloom in the ashes of loss. Where ordinary people did extraordinary things simply by refusing to look away when someone needed help. The flame that had nearly destroyed them had instead forged something unbreakable. And Noah, standing in the light of a rebuilt building, holding the hand of a woman who'd shown him how to be brave in ways he'd never imagined, was grateful for every single moment that had led him here. The fire had taken, but it had also given, and what it gave was worth every scar.